So we're here to talk about evolution. That thing your immune system does every time a virus mutates. Not some nonsense about fish hooking up with a monkey at a nightclub, because that's not how this works. Evolution is just this wild concept where living things adapt over generations to better survive in their environment. Totally radical, right? Almost like it's just biology doing biology. We see it happening in real time, like in controlled lab experiments where bacteria literally evolve to survive in specific solutions. They don't sit down for a team meeting. Nature just filters out the losers. Or how about the London Underground mosquitoes? They evolved into a completely different breed just from chilling in the subway for a few decades. Turns out isolation and pressure make more than diamonds. They make brand new mosquitoes that can't even breed with their surface cousins anymore. That's speciation. And it's not hypothetical, it's literally happening within our lifetimes. If that's not enough, let's not forget about the mountains of fossil evidence. Not just a few bones lying around, entire chronological novels written in rock, showing clear transitions from species to species. Tic Tac didn't just crawl out of the water to stretch its legs for fun. It was a snapshot of change. So no, evolution isn't a game of genetics spin the bottle between fish and monkeys. It's the observable, testable, relentless process that explains why you have wisdom teeth, a tailbone, and a cousin who thinks the Earth is 6,000 years old. Many times, people that I'm debating on evolution just spend the entire debate not understanding what evolution is. The fact is, evolution is a process that goes on constantly. It is happening now. We see it in real time. It has allowed us to be the people we are. It is simply adapting to environmental pressures. And that doesn't just mean having more babies makes a better species. That could mean a species having to reduce itself to less than 1,000 in its entire population to be able to survive the environmental pressures. Evolution is biology in progress. It is seeing biology adapt to the world that it lives in, and the things that survive those pressures, those adaptations are the ones that carry on. That's why we're taller now than we used to be. That's why our brains are bigger now than they used to be, apart from flat earthers, I guess. Uh, Evolution isn't just some crazy theory. It is a fact of the world we live in, and it is how we have come to be the biggest, most intelligent species on this planet. So the the evidence for evolution, there's mountains of it. So if Jim Bob has evidence that evolution doesn't happen, then I'll be glad to hear that. But I certainly hope that Jim Bob doesn't just straw man what evolution actually is and argue against something he's made up, like every single person I've ever spoken to about evolution does. So yeah, thank you very much for having me on, James. Glad to hear what
Thank
Jim
you.
Bob has to say.
Thank you. And before we kick it over to Made by Jim Bob, I want to give you a quick couple of housekeeping things. Folks, if you did not know, at the bottom right of your screen, Andrew Wilson will be taking on Apostate Prophet. That's on April 28th. That is at Asheville, North Carolina. You don't want to miss it. If you're nearby, grab tickets, which are linked in the description box below. There's an option for free tickets. So check out that link. And if you're like, hey, I would love to do that and come for a free ticket, but I can't make it, I'm in Australia or England or Washington, you can watch it live here at the Modern Day Debate YouTube channel. So hit that subscribe button. And with that, we'll kick it over to Made by Jim Bob for his opening. Thanks very much. The floor is all yours, Jim Bob.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess the question is, what is evolution? It's said to be the process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of the Earth. Now, I like to point out that it's often claimed that evolution inside of natural biology in the natural world, it's in the natural sciences, it's referred to as a scientific theory. My contention with evolution is that it's actually not a valid scientific theory, because for something to be a scientific theory, there's actually a pretty strict criteria to call something a valid scientific theory. So not only do I have contentions with evolution and its larger claims, which goes outside of the bounds of simply adaptation, their larger claims over time are unjustified. But even pinpoint...
The word pinpointing.
Okay. Well,
So
okay.
only about 10 seconds.
Okay, great. That's fine. All right. So I was talking about the scientific theory. There needs to be a criteria for calling something a scientific theory inside of natural science. I said that evolution doesn't make its way through the scientific method. For those of you who are wondering what that is, it starts with an observation in reality. It starts with you then ask a question about what you're observing, and then the question leads to what's causing what you're observing. Then it leads to an experiment. Then you have to actually do the experiment. You have to manipulate things, and then you come to some conclusion. And only after the conclusion can you develop what's called a scientific theory, which is essentially an inductive conclusion to a high percent of likelihood until proven otherwise. Now, I'm saying that evolution doesn't even make its way through this. It doesn't even have a viable hypothesis. The only arbiter for competing hypotheses, that is to say, Craig is saying, well, do you have any other explanation? The only way for two competing hypotheses to exist inside of natural science is experiment. But the fact that evolution doesn't even provide an experiment it's sitting outside of the bounds of what's considered a scientific theory. It's basically a massive story, a hunch, a post-diction justification. You're looking back in time, you're imagining what could have happened, and then you go and try to find evidence for the story that you've told, right? So it's all confirmation bias. If the observation in evolution is variation of organisms, if Craig wants to try to take us through the scientific method and prove that evolution is a scientific theory, I would want to know his observation. Most of the time they say variation of life itself, right? That's the observation. Now, the assumed cause, I'm still waiting from any evolution proponent to tell me the assumed cause, because that's how science works. So my argument today is pretty simple. Premise one is a scientific theory is the product of the scientific method. Premise two, evolution cannot be run through the scientific method. Conclusion, evolution is not a valid scientific theory. So what is it? Well, it's a story. It's a hunch. It's basically looking at reality as it is and making an assumption about a past that you can observe, and then trying to find some sort of supportive evidence for the past you can't observe. And that's pretty much all it is. Now, conflating adaptation at the local level, at the molecular level, looking at what bacteria does and doesn't, has nothing to do with the claim that every animal we see today comes from a previous kind of animal or a different population altogether that it all branches from. There's actually no evidence of this. I can give a hypothetical to demonstrate Craig wouldn't even know how to delineate between a fossil he found that matches his hunch and a fossil he found that doesn't match his hunch. In fact, when they point to, notice how when they bring up, say, transitional fossils, there's nothing that's not a transitional fossil. So when they say we found a transitional fossil and I ask, are there any fossils that aren't transitional? And he says no, so the distinction, it doesn't matter. So if everything's a transitional fossil, then finding one, you might as well pick up anything out of the ground and call it a transitional fossil, because under evolution, it has to be transitional. That doesn't really tell us anything. It doesn't tell us how things change. It just says a story that things change. So that's another problem evolution has, is when you tell the story from a broad view, it sounds like a compelling story. It sounds almost correct. When you ask granular questions about what is actually occurring that makes this long process do its thing, they're at a loss for words. They basically just say it happens. Well, it just happened. Over time, it happened. Clearly, it happened. Well, I don't even think Craig or any other evolution proponent could actually tell me what happened. Like, what is actually happening? So there's a famous mathematician and astronomer who stated the following in regards to astronomy. He said, I think this also applies to evolution. He said, as far as hypotheses are concerned, let no one expect anything certain from astronomy, which cannot furnish it, lest accept that as the truth idea is conceived for another purpose, and depart from the study a greater fool than when he entered. This applies to evolution because you don't have the ability to manipulate anything inside the evolution paradigm. All you have is the ability to manipulate things at the adaptive level, at the molecular level, at the local level. This says nothing. This demonstrates nothing about the macro, what's often called macroevolution. It says nothing about what happened. It says something about what you can observe happening. These are two different things. I would argue that evolution itself, as a large worldview, is almost religious, and in the sense that what it does is it takes what might be true at the particular level, and then it says it's true about the whole, which is a basic composition fallacy. This essentially is the argument against evolution being a proper scientific theory. Evolution cannot produce a viable hypothesis, and it cannot be taken through the scientific method. Scientific theories are the product of the scientific method. They are not the beginning of the scientific method, and what we'll hear tonight is a bunch of beginning stories, then some supporting analogies or evidence to try to buttress the assumption. Well, the assumption is what's in question. I'm not granting the assumption.
You got it. And with that, want to let you know a couple of quick housekeeping things. Folks, first, very exciting to share that Modern Day Debate is helping promote and participate in, as I'll be flying out to be the moderator, this epic debate between Andrew Wilson and AP on whether or not Christians should be Zionists. It's going to be in Asheville, North Carolina. You don't want to miss it. Check out the link in the description box. Grab tickets now. There's even an option for a free ticket. Highly encourage you. It's going to be amazing. You don't want to miss it. As well as, very excited that for that particular debate, we are doing a fundraiser. So as you can see at the bottom right of the screen, lens fundraiser. These lenses will be used at that debate, as well as future debates between Modern Day Debate and Uncensored America. For example, our upcoming collaboration series called Outnumbered. We're going to use them over and over. Check out the GoFundMe link at the top of the live chat and the top of the description box. You don't want to miss it. Help us make these debates a reality, and thanks for your support. With that, gentlemen, thank you very much. The floor is all yours for open dialogue.
So, Craig.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
Yeah. I think you kind of have some misunderstandings about what a scientific theory is in relation to the scientific method. It's not just a product of the scientific method. A scientific theory is something that is well substantiated with a body of facts, including observable experimentation and following the scientific method. Its scientific method is just one aspect of having a scientific theory. The scientific method is itself just a method of helping us determine if a hypothesis has been falsified or not.
Okay.
It's not the entirety of the scientific theory. So I think some misunderstandings of terminology there help towards your confusion.
Okay. Are you saying that a scientific theory is necessary, the scientific method is necessary for a theory, but other things can be included?
Yeah, it's part of the scientific method. It's not a scientific. The scientific method is something that we use to try and falsify a hypothesis.
Okay.
That's just all it is. Okay. A scientific theory is a different thing. Using the scientific method as part of our experimentation process to then get, okay, so we now have a scientific theory. Yeah, it's part of it. But you were like, well, it's the product of the scientific method, which is just kind of a misinterpretation.
Well, I want to just clarify, is it possible to develop a scientific theory without the scientific method?
Scientific method is what you use to try and falsify a hypothesis. So if you want to have a hypothesis in your scientific theory, then you need to use the scientific method to get to that. But you're saying, right, is this one thing that slots in here? You're not understanding what the scientific method is.
I'm asking
the scientific method isn't
Craig,
just a thing that
Craig,
slots
you didn't answer
as part. Yeah, let me finish what I'm saying.
The
scientific method isn't just the scientific method isn't just something that slots in as part of this or that. It is a process. It is a tool.
I asked you.
All I'm saying is it's incorrect to say the scientific theory is just a product of.
I didn't say just.
Method.
I didn't say just.
You did. That was the word you said.
Craig.
But anyway,
you're gish galloping, bro. You're gish galloping.
I'm literally not. I just wanted to put out. And Jim Bob, when I
didn't
give
answer
you
my
an
question.
Explanation, you say I'm gish galloping. That's not my fault. You don't understand.
Let me know when you're
I
done.
just did directly answer your question.
Oh, the question was this: can you produce a scientific theory without the scientific method? I didn't get a clear answer on that. I'll put it in premise form, Craig. A scientific.
I've already answered that. Asked and answered.
Interrupting. A scientific.
Asked and answered.
Interrupting
because
again.
I've asked and answered.
One at a time.
Okay, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no with my
I'm just saying, I've asked and
Okay,
answered.
you're gonna
I
keep
refuse
interrupting.
to repeatedly
One at a
like him.
time, gentlemen. I have
Just
to
to be
break it
clear,
into
for the
1 2
purposes
minute
of this debate,
segments.
I absolutely
Hold on
refuse
a
to
second.
continually answer the same
I'm
question.
going
If
to
I have
break
answered
it
the
into 1
question,
or 2
I
minute
will move on.
segments. Okay, just gonna. Okay. Who asked the most recent question?
I'm asking a question, and it's a yes or no question, and I didn't get an answer, and so I'll ask it a different
Asked and
way.
answered.
Okay. Um,
Okay,
it,
wait, hold on one sec. Okay, Craig, you feel like you answered it?
Yes, my entire spiel that I just gave there answered the question, so
said a
now the
yes.
conversation can
So,
move on. If Jim Bob wants to
wow.
continually answer the question, ask the question over and over,
All right,
I will
Wow.
just say
just
asked and
Wow.
answered. That's
Wow.
it.
we just want to just to see. Okay, so you're saying all you have to say is just, "Yep, I answered it,"
Okay, I'm gonna.
and
Yes,
then
I've
made
answered
by
it.
Jim.
Okay. All right. I'll just take
Crying
the.
out loud. You guys honestly are just. I
Okay.
appreciate your enthusiasm, but need you to
Okay.
take a deep breath.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is break it into 1 minute segments. All right. So Craig said that he answered it. So Jim
Okay.
Bob will give you a chance for
Okay.
60 seconds
Sure.
uninterrupted.
All right.
Floor is all yours.
I'm gonna take the answer as yes. A scientific.
Let's see. So I'm just click ask to unmute so that way you can
I have
speak.
to ask to unmute.
So there should be a little window that pops up on your Zoom window.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Ready for you.
Well, in all of those words, I'm going to take it as a yes that a scientific theory needs to actually go through the scientific method. Otherwise, what are we talking about? Further, if there's two hypotheses, I would argue that the only way to arbitrate between two competing hypotheses is exactly that, the experiment, which is the scientific method. So the reason I asked Craig, is a scientific theory something that has to be at the tail end of the scientific method? And I didn't get a clear answer on that.
Asked and answered.
You're just gonna please answer it again for the audience.
No, I've refused to answer questions multiple
That's fine.
times.
That's fine if you don't want to answer. Okay, so
No, I've already answered it,
Okay.
and everybody heard me answer it, Jim
Okay.
Bob. If you didn't understand the answer, that's a you problem.
would you say that evolution is a scientific theory?
It 100% is a scientific theory. It's a stone cold, brilliant definition of a scientific
Beautiful.
theory. Would you like me to explain to you how it is a scientific
No,
theory?
no, not really.
Well, no, in fact, I'm gonna
no,
explain how it's a scientific theory.
This is my
No, please
cross-examination.
stop interrupting me.
No, this is a
I'm
cross-examination.
No, there's no cross-examination. You asked the question.
There's no
and I'm going to answer.
cross-examination of your affirmative position.
You've just asked the question, and I'm going to answer
It's
it.
a series of questions.
I do apologize that the beginning of your sentence.
He's not allowing me to run a line of questions,
So why
James.
is evolution
All
a
right.
scientific
So
theory?
all right, gentlemen. So I do. We could do this where it's a cross exam
Yes,
where
please.
each of you gets 10 minutes to.
Oh, no,
ask the other
I didn't agree to a
Craig,
cross-examination.
I'm not
conversation.
with my sentence.
Oh my
For
God.
crying out loud! If I'm still in the
didn't
middle of the
agree to-
sentence, can you
I
allow me
apologize.
to
It's just Jim Bob
sentence?
appears to be trying to
All
run the
right, dear
debate.
gosh, what is wrong with you? All right, if I'm still talking, like, why are you? I'm gonna just start talking while James is midway half sentence. Like, shut your trap and let me finish. So, both of you, we're gonna do 10 minutes of cross exam. That's one theoretical. We could keep going with open dialogue, but it seems like neither of you really wants to allow the other to ask a series of questions. We could do 1 minute segments. Just back and forth, 60 seconds for one guy, 60 seconds for the other. What are you guys wanting to do?
Well,
I very much like an open conversation if Jim Bob is willing to
Hey,
actually
we got
have a
you,
conversation.
we got
which
you. Yep.
in-
Open conversation. That's the answer, not the if Jim Bob is blah, blah, blah. All right, Jim Bob, short answer. What do you want to do?
if it's an open conversation, in conversations about in debates, have questions, have cross-examination in the conversation. So if I'm going to ask a question,
What do you want to do, Jim?
I want to cross-examine his affirmative, which is a fucking debate. That's what a fucking debate is.
You want to cross-examine? Great. Okay. So
thought
it
he
sounds like
wasn't-
you guys are not willing to meet in the middle. Like, Craig, are you willing to do any sort of cross-exam?
Yeah, if we can actually, agree on some terms. The problem is that Jim Bob is
Okay,
trying to
so
define
yes,
terms.
hold on.
Yeah.
You want to get a fucking debate on? Like, let's
Yeah, no,
go.
I'm cool. That's what I want. I want the debate. That's why I'm saying let's just have the debate. But Jim Bob doesn't want to.
You guys
Really?
Just
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we'll do 5 minutes where Jim will ask questions. Jim will ask questions to Craig, and then we'll switch it. With Craig, we'll ask questions to Jim Bob for 5 minutes. Fair?
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
We'll
Does
just
that
keep
mean I
going
get
back
to
and forth.
answer the questions, though? That's the thing.
If they're yes or no,
And
yes.
No,
here we go.
Questions can always
5
be
minutes.
yes or no.
The timer is set.
Okay.
Jim Bob, now's your chance to ask
Okay.
questions to Craig.
Craig, you said that evolution is a scientific theory, okay? Would you say evolution, being a scientific theory, can be run through the scientific method?
100% yes.
Okay. So if evolution can be run through the scientific method, can you give me the observation that you start with?
Let me see. I've got it all written down here. Observation. Bacteria sometimes develop new traits or resistance under pressure.
Okay. And so if the scientific method asks a question about what you're observing bacteria do a thing, and then what's the question you're asking in the scientific method about that observation?
Can we observe evolution happening in a lab environment across generations?
No, that's another observation. You're restarting.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Can
It's a
we
question.
observe is an observation, Craig.
Yes, it's a question. Is it a question? Has a question mark at the
Okay,
end. Therefore,
okay.
Jim Bob, it
Enough.
is a question.
Enough.
But didn't he ask?
Not enough.
Didn't
I'm
he
in the
ask?
middle of
Can we
talking, Jim
observe?
Bob.
Yes, I said
Yes.
this, James.
Yeah, Jim Bob,
Dude,
sorry, I'm
stop.
answering the question.
You're not
I haven't
asking a
finished
question.
answering- I'm answering the question. I'm trying to answer the question. If you could allow me the courtesy of answering the question.
Okay,
too.
go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
you're burning up
Yeah.
time. Can you observe?
Yeah. Can you observe evolution happening
Why
in a
are you
lab
asking the
environment
question? It's
across
been asked
generations?
times.
That
Just
is a
directly
question.
to the answer.
So in the scientific method, the observation is the beginning. Then you ask a question about the phenomenon you're observing. Notice when
Yes.
I asked Craig what, because you're leading to the hypothesis, what causes the phenomenon you're observing. Notice when I asked what the question is, Craig went back to another observational question. Now he's back at he's back at the start of the scientific method.
No, incorrect. The
Yes.
question can be an observation. It doesn't need to not be an observation.
Right.
The question can be, oh, can I see this happening? That can absolutely be a question.
Yeah, that's another
The question can also the question can also be, why is this happening?
Yeah,
The
great.
question could be whatever I want it to be, Jim Bob. You don't understand how the scientific method works. Now, the next step would be
so
the
much
hypothesis.
gish galloping.
No, I'm in the middle of talking. The next step would be a hypothesis. The hypothesis would be, if E. coli has grown for thousands of generations, it will evolve to become better adapted to its environment. That is a direct hypothesis coming from the question that was answered. The next step from that would be making a prediction based on the hypothesis. You can shake your head all you like, but I'm the one with the physics degree.
No.
The next step would, after the hypothesis, is you can make a prediction. The prediction would be, if I put the E. coli in a solution that would stop it being able to breed itself because of poison, then
So if you poison something and it dies, that's evolution? Dude.
I haven't finished my sentence.
You're
Here's the
gish
thing, Jim
galloping,
Bob.
bro.
I hadn't finished my
You're
I'm gonna
gish
finish what I'm
galloping
saying.
a story.
No, I'm not. If I'm going to finish what I'm saying, and that's the problem. You
All
listen
right.
to half of what
You're
I
just
said.
I want my time back
the
then.
The prediction is, if I put the E. coli in a solution that is poisonous to it,
Wow.
will it evolve to adapt to be able to overcome that poisonous solution?
That's a different a different hypothesis than evolution.
No, it's
though.
not.
Yes, it is.
That is a prediction
No, it's
from
not.
the hypothesis.
Let me answer.
That's it.
Let me,
No,
dude. This
that's
is
a
absurd,
prediction
James. This
from
is
the
absurd.
hypothesis.
Right,
This
we're
is
gonna
absurd.
go to
That's
the
a
next.
prediction
We're gonna
from
go
the
Absolutely
hypothesis.
absurd.
What's your question, Jim Bob, that you'd like to ask?
I wanted Craig to take me through one observation to a hypothesis.
I'm doing that.
Dude,
I'm literally
dude.
doing that.
Hey, Greg, shut up so we can actually get this. I'm just giving Jim Bob a chance to say what he was asking.
I want a simple observation that leads to a hypothesis. Craig went from observing one thing to then introducing poison. Okay, observing.
That's a
Dude,
prediction.
can you control yourself? That's a different observation, dude.
It's not. It's a prediction.
That for a different observation.
No, for the same observation.
Okay, so naturally in natural science, do you see bacteria getting poisoned? Do you in natural?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So,
Absolutely.
Okay,
that's what medication is.
That's a different observation than you originally
No, it's
said.
not.
Yes, it is.
Right. If you will give me just 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Oh, let's
to
just
go
give you
through the
5
scientific
minutes.
method.
Yeah. Give me.
Right.
Give
If
yourself
you
5
want
minutes.
me to go, you asked me the question, Jim Bob. Can I take you through the scientific method with an observation?
Yeah.
I am doing exactly that.
What's the observation?
The observation is bacteria sometimes develops new traits or resistances under pressure.
That's great.
Do we agree do we
great.
agree
That's an observation. Great. Now the next question in the scientific method is what causes that?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No.
What else would the question be?
The question doesn't have to be what causes that.
What's the hypothesis?
A question that comes after.
Yeah,
you're not letting me Jim Bob, you ask me a question, you don't let me answer. So you ask the question, what is the question? The question is, can we observe
more observation
evolution happening in a lab experiment across generations? Right? That is the question I have developed from my observation. Now we have the hypothesis. The hypothesis is if E. coli is grown for thousands of generations, it will evolve to become better adapted to environment.
Yep.
That is a logical progression from the observation question hypothesis.
Craig.
The next part is the prediction. The prediction is if you put the E. coli in a solution that is poisonous to it, it will adapt to the pressures and overcome the poison. The next step is the experiment. And this experiment has been going on since 1988 and is still
Adaptation
ongoing today. Is in fact the longest ongoing experiment.
It's a gish gallop king.
You said 2 minutes. You said you'd give me 2 minutes.
So adaptation.
Not gish galloping, answering your question.
Craig, observing adaptation and calling it evolution are two different things.
That is evolution.
No,
it's not.
No, then why are you using different words?
Adaptation is part of evolution.
Adaptation
is evolution.
Hold on.
Evolution
dude,
is adapting
you gotta let me
to
talk,
your
dude.
environment.
James, this is insane. This is insane.
You asked me a question,
have to
I
have
get
the
to
actual
answer.
questions. So
yeah.
What was your question?
If
JD?
adaptation is one thing and evolution is a different thing, then you can't make them synonymous exactly, okay? So when you say I watch something adapt, you're watching something at the local level adapt, like change to some sort of inputs, okay? This is not what's in question tonight. What's in question tonight is some sort of transmutation. It's some sort of macro change back in time, evolution. The story of evolution, of how animals and populations diversified over time at the macro, large scale animals, sexual selection, all of that, right? We're not looking at a petri dish. All you're doing for the audience is saying, I looked at something change and react to stimuli, therefore what?
Okay, so there is no difference between macro and micro evolution. Evolution is evolution. You trying to separate them is a disingenuous tactic used by evolution deniers, right? It's not a difference. The fact that it can happen in a short time or a long time is the same thing. The evidence of it happening is that we can make it happen in a short time. We can also go to the London Underground mosquitoes, who literally became a different species, unable to interbreed with other mosquitoes within decades.
Why are you calling it a mosquito?
I'm in the middle of a sentence.
So it's a mosquito, but not a mosquito?
I'm in the middle of a sentence because of the pressures of the environment they are. Evolution is literally adapting to environmental pressures. That is the definition of evolution. Adaptation is part of the process.
Okay, Craig, if adaptation and observing adaptation at the local level is evolution, why would you need to produce an experiment if the observation is identical to the term evolution, dummy?
Because we have to test a hypothesis, dummy.
No, look, do you understand the problem you're in? You just said
there is no problem. I have no problem. You are the one that doesn't understand evolution. You are the one that is disingenuously trying to separate macro and micro evolution like they're different things.
Where we basically break this up. Craig, you have 5 minutes to ask questions of Jim Bob.
Okay. I mean, I'm here to offer evidence for evolution, but Jim Bob is trying to separate the things. So I don't really have questions for him because I was here to answer his questions about evolution.
You mean a cross-examination?
He hasn't authored an alternative to evolution.
That's question begging.
So, no, it's not. It's part of the debate. Nope. There's no question begging there.
Okay.
In a debate,
oh my gosh, dude.
I'm talking. In a debate, both parties have to present evidence for their case, right? My case is evolution is real. I presented evidence for that.
Oh
Jim Bob hasn't presented evidence for an alternative, so I don't know how.
So much story.
This is more like your more opening statement, but this is a good time to ask questions to Jim Bob.
Yeah, that's the point. I don't have any questions for Jim Bob because he hasn't presented an alternative for me to cross-examine. So
So
if Jim Bob could present an alternative
unbelievable.
to evolution, then I could absolutely 100% ask him questions about that alternative. The thing is, I don't know what his position is apart from I don't understand evolution. I have evidence for
Mm.
evolution and I can explain evolution to him, but he's not even accepting the fact that evolution, there's no difference between micro and macro. He's just going, oh, well, that's different. And I say it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Tell me when you're
questions can I
done.
ask him?
Yeah, tell me when you're done.
Please, Jim Bob, present your case
I
for an
just
alternative to
Well,
evolution.
first of all, presenting an alternative would appeal to the scientific method, being that the only arbiter for two competing hypotheses is an experiment in natural science. But if I can't even if you can't even take evolution through the scientific method,
I did that.
dude, I'm talking. If you can't,
I did that. Did you not remember? I literally did that just now.
He can't control himself.
No, I'm just saying, Jim Bob, I did that just now. Do you not remember?
So Craig also just said that observing adaptation at the bacterial level is observing evolution. If
Yes.
observation of adaptation is identical to evolution, then you're observing the theory that you're trying to prove by just naming it evolution. Now, if all you had to do, Craig, is observe bacteria, you wouldn't need to craft a scientific theory because your observation is literally the name of the theory, evolution.
If you just want to make assumptions, yeah, but the fact is, in science, we like to observe something, ask a question about it, form a hypothesis, predict from that hypothesis, and then test that hypothesis, because we don't just go, oh, we saw a thing, we saw it happening, so therefore that's that. As in science, we like to go through the scientific method, and Jim Bob, you are lying to everybody watching right now by saying I couldn't take you through the scientific method when I did exactly that. You not understanding the scientific method and disagreeing with the scientific method is a you problem.
Okay, cool. So this is the thing. If observing bacteria change and react to stimuli is evolution, then it's unnecessary to craft a hypothesis or a theory because you're literally observing the thing you're calling evolution everywhere.
No, it's not, because you do that to do science. You don't just I'm
that's big brain stuff.
I'm talking.
You do
don't
science.
Just do it. You don't just look at it and go, well, that's that. Even if you think you've observed the thing happening and you call it that thing, you still do tests on that thing to make sure it is that thing. You go through the scientific method, like I have with you many times already, Jim Bob, and you have just denied it.
Okay. Here, let's take a different approach here. Let's take like a cat, okay? A cat, would you agree that a cat is a sort of universal category of an animal?
A cat is a universal category of an animal.
Yeah, a cat's not a dog, right?
Well, no, a cat's not a dog.
Okay,
it's
a cat. Okay,
genetically separate species.
Gotcha. Was there a time under the evolutionary view where a cat, as we know it today, actually wasn't a cat? That it just didn't exist?
Yes, cats and dogs and you and I all have common ancestors.
Okay, so if the common ancestor for a cat was one thing, how do you look at bacteria changing and come to the conclusion that there was once an animal that's not a cat that the splintering from, fractioning from, became a cat, where a cat emerged from this process? How do you extrapolate one to the other?
We look at the evidence we have, which is the fossil records that we do have, even if they're not 100% complete. We look at what we do have, we form hypotheses from all the information that we have, and we go, well, if this is what we think evolution is, then we can test it and see that we can change a species. Now, when you put E. coli into a solution that is poisonous to it, it literally becomes a different species of E. coli with different DNA and different attributes to survive within that solution that was previously poisonous to it.
Dude, I ask you.
I'm in the middle. If you want me to get through,
you can't gish gallop, bro.
No, it's not gish galloping. It is me having an explanation, Jim Bob. But the problem is, you don't let me get to the end and then interrupt.
What did I ask you?
So just be quiet. You asked me if I can explain to you how we can have what was before a cat and say, well, there's now a cat, and then
that's
relate
not what I
that
asked
to
you.
Bacteria.
Okay, yeah. So
yes, it is.
Now, more clearly, how do you look at the local level of change, which I call adaptation to external stimuli, right?
Evolution. That's what evolution is.
Stop. How do you look at that event and then extrapolate that a cat, right, through fossils now, how do you extrapolate that a cat comes from things that are not cats?
Because we look at the fossils that we do have.
How?
The fossils that don't. What do you mean how? We take
You just look
fossils
at them?
and we look at. Am I allowed to answer the question? Right, Jim, we know when you ask a question, that's when you stop talking and let the other person speak. Cool. So, yes, we look at fossils, we examine them, we compare them to other skeletons and stuff that we have of different creatures. We compare them to other fossil records that we have.
Okay.
We do experiments on the DNA and stuff that we have within them,
Okay.
and we compare them to what is now, and we make inferences. And we use that as part of our hypothesis to then form predictions and do tests. Now, here's the thing. We don't have time machines, so we can't go back in time and test something for millions of years. But what we can do is start an experiment like there was one started in 1988 to continually test the hypothesis of evolution being adaptation to environmental pressures, right? You keep disingenuously trying to separate adaptation to environmental pressures from evolution. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so when I asked you, how do you do this? You basically said you look at fossils, and then you said a bunch of other things, and you said you do tests.
Correct,
Nothing,
I said a bunch of things.
It's my turn. Nothing in what you just said explained how you come to the conclusion, the extrapolation, by the way, an assertion.
Oh, no, it did.
Dude, let me talk. I just let you ramble. Shut up.
No, you're lying.
Shut
I just
up.
did.
All right. I do have to jump in here. Craig, I know that I said something like shut the fuck up earlier or whatever it was. I do want to ask, let's allow Jim Bob to finish this point. I promise
Yeah,
we will
I know.
come back to you,
It's
Craig.
annoying, isn't it, Jim Bob, when people keep interrupting? It's really annoying, isn't it?
So, when you find a fossil, let's call it a cat fossil, Craig. So, that's a new observation now, right? So, you found this thing and you bring it out of the ground, and now it's your job for the audience to tell me, how did you hold this fossil in your hand and come to the conclusion that a cat that we see today comes from this changing process of this fossil? Please tell us.
I already answered that, but I guess I'll answer it again because you like asking the same question multiple times. So we look at the fossil and we compare it to the fossil records that we have. We compare it to cats that exist today. We compare it to other big cats. We compare it to the skeletons of cats that we find mummified. And we look at the lineage and we go, well, that looks like that. And there's bits that change. Well, then there's bits that look like this different. That shows this adaptation. And then what we also do is we compare the time of the fossils to what was happening in the world at the time. So we could look at, say, a larger cat fossil, and then maybe a little bit later there is a smaller cat fossil, right? And then we look at, well, why would that happen? Well, maybe at that time there was a drought in the world. There was less resources available. So the proto-cat becoming smaller as an adaptation to the environmental pressures was something that would be suitable. And then we keep comparing it to all the fossil records that we have and compare those fossil records to the current cats that exist. And we make the inference that this comes from this, this, from this. And then to test the fact that species can change, we do experiments like the one that has been going on since 1988.
Okay.
So please don't ask the same question again.
That's amazing. So you told a story about what you think happened based on similarity. Hold on. If I find a fossil that looks like something today, I'll call this hypothetical camel world for the sake of simplicity, okay? Right now, someone digs up an animal and it looks like a camel, but it's smaller. And voila, they say, wow, this is very similar. They come to the conclusion because they use your methodology of fairy tale telling, and they say it must have the camel we see today must have come from this camel because it's smaller and they're similar. Okay, the observation is actually similarities, a similarity of one thing you found with something that you observed today. That's the observation. Actually, that's not the conclusion. Now, in another part of the world, Craig, track with me here. Let's say a Peruvian community finds the same exact type of fossil, right? These bones, and they erect it out and they giggle and they laugh and they point at it. Only they come to a different conclusion. They come to the conclusion that the thing they found, they already know what it is because it's still around, okay? Hypothetically, this thing's still around. So they have camels and they have this smaller thing that looks like a camel. They're both available to them in real time right now. Now, I'm asking you a question right now. when you find this smaller camel-looking thing in the ground, and it looks like the larger camel-looking thing, how do you use the observation called similarity, right, in phenotype? How do you come to the conclusion that one came from the other merely from similarity?
We compare it to all of the other evidence that we have showing similarity between other species as well, and we look at the transition between one thing and another. Yes, all fossils are transitional. That's something
you look at the thing you're assuming.
No, did you not? Okay.
How do you prove transition? You said you look at transition.
If you don't interrupt me with your assumptions of what I'm saying. Right, Jim Bob. Okay, here's what
How do you prove transition? Right. You look at transition.
Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I'm gonna do.
Science.
I'm gonna try and answer the question, and you're gonna shut up. Right, you do comparative anatomy. You study the skeletal structure, skull shape, jaw configuration, teeth, spine, paws. Cats have unique traits like retractable claws, a specific carnassial tooth shape, a certain vertebrae flexibilities. If the proto-cat's bones share these hallmarks, then we can make an inference. You do genetic analysis, if available. Rare, but if there's DNA preserved, e.g. in Ice Age fossils, scientists compare it to modern feline genomes. Even degraded DNA can be partially reconstructed to find common markers. 3, you can use morphogenics. Use 3D imaging or digital calipers to measure bone proportions and angles. Run statistical comparisons with modern species to see how closely they line up. 4, fossil stratigraphy and dating. Date the fossil using radiometric techniques like carbon dating, uranium series, etc. Compare it to the timeline of known cat evolution. Does it fall in an area where cat ancestors were developing? Then it fits in the family photo. 5, biology. Location matters. Did this proto-cat live in a region where early fields evolved or spread? Fossils found along migration routes of early cats confirm ancestry. 6, phylogenetic analysis. Build a family tree using traits and or genetic data.
Cool.
See where the proto-cat fits among big cats, small cats, and other feline forms.
Dude,
if it branches
James,
off,
He's reading ChatGPT right now. This is insane.
You wanted me to tell you.
You're reading us an essay, dude. You don't even know this shit. You're reading it from ChatGPT.
You wanted me to read it. You wanted me to tell you.
You're reading, dude.
All right.
Sorry, am I not allowed to read?
You're not allowed to have ChatGPT debate for you, dude.
I'm not using ChatGPT. You want me to tell you the thing you've asked me to? Then let me tell you.
Look, it was very simple.
If it sounds like it's from ChatGPT, then who cares, right?
Hold on,
it's the thing you asked for.
Unbelievable.
Hold on one sec. I do want to just jump in because it is fair that there's two ways to look at it. One is, Craig is going to share as many points as he can that are relevant to the question. And then likewise, at some point, if Jim Bob wants to jump in and say like, okay, that's good enough, like 3 or 4 examples or something, like that's reasonable too. So what was the exact question, Jim Bob?
The question was this: if you find some bones that are similar to something that exists, the reason I use the analogy of the Peruvian group is that it could. How do you know that an animal just didn't die out that could have just as well lived alongside the camel that looks similar to it? Do we see animals today that look similar to other animals that aren't the same animals? Yes. So the question of finding something and thinking in your head, well, this thing that exists today must have come from that thing, doesn't tell us whether or not that thing could have just as well died out. And if it lived, it could have lived alongside of the thing that it looks like. So I'm asking Craig, what methodology does he use to determine the thing he found didn't just die out and could have lived similar alongside the similar thing, or that the similarities itself draws out this extrapolated transition between one and the other. And he can't give me an answer. Why? Because the whole thing is conjecture.
Right, okay, I'm going to say 9 things that answer your question.
Oh, 9?
Right?
Just 9?
Yes. Just 9, right? But it answered your question. So
let's go one at a time.
Question,
one at a time. No, one at a time.
Comparative in that. No, I'm going to just.
No, one at a time.
You're going to listen.
No, one at a time.
I'm going to list the 9.
No, this is bullshit.
Comparative anatomy, genetic analysis, morphogenics, fossil stratigraphy and dating, biogeography, phylogenetic analysis, unique shared derived traits, transitional features, pathology, and wear patterns. Those all answer your questions.
No, it doesn't. That lists things.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Craig, did you just list
you
things?
Cry all you like.
Craig,
just answer the question.
Craig, did your 9 things you list?
Craig. Say the fucking name right. Craig.
No. Craig, that's how I talk. That's how I talk. I can't change my mouth. So
you have to.
But that's
right,
not my name.
Focused.
Craig, the things you listed. The things you listed, nothing, you didn't explain the answer to my question. You just listed things that you think answer the question. You didn't actually answer the question.
They do answer the question. If you don't like the answer, that's your problem.
You just listed things.
I also explained them previously, but you cried that I was explaining them.
Name the first one.
Right, the comparative anatomy.
Okay, you compare things. That's what I asked.
Yes.
How do you determine something that looks similar? How do you determine that it comes from the thing that it looks similar to?
I answered that specifically. You didn't listen. Study the skeletal structure, skull shape, jaw configuration.
Stop there.
Teeth,
Stop
spine.
there. Stop there.
No, don't interrupt
Stop
me while I'm
there.
talking.
One thing at a time.
No.
One claim at a time.
No.
How does
Listen.
skeletal structure?
Hold on one sec.
Bob, no.
This guy gets to yap.
What was the original question?
The original question was, how do you look at two things and you compare them and they look similar? And how do you draw out similarity equals one comes from the other? And Craig said skeletal analysis. Okay,
Yes,
now he's
and then
hold
I
on.
was explaining
Hold on.
it.
He's about to read off the rest of the 9 ChatGPT things, right? I'm asking.
I'm not. I'm reading the one thing that you asked me.
How does skeletal analysis tell us one thing came from the other?
I was in the middle of saying that, and you started crying. Right, so I'm going to do it again. Don't cry. Study the skeletal structure, i.e. skull shape, jaw configuration, teeth, spine, paws. Right? That's one part.
Study?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Craig?
You
study
never
them.
taught how to study?
I'm studying them. The
yes,
question,
you study them.
How
you look at them.
And you find that they're similar, right?
Yeah, right. Well, the
Great.
next part
Back
is,
to the first question.
Right? Cats have unique traits like retractable claws, a specific carnassial tooth shape, and certain varietal flexibilities. If this proto-cat's bones share these hallmarks, then we can make the inference that they are a similar species.
That is not what I'm asking. I'm asking...
Yes, it is!
I didn't ask whether things are similar, Craig. I asked you a question. When you look at similar things that share similar anatomy, phenotype, and functions, like claws and ears a certain shape and fur, how do you come to the conclusion that when you find a skeleton of such things, that it came from... All you're stating, audience, you can hear this, is he's stating similarities exist again.
Right. Well, that was one part. So one was the comparative anatomy, right? So that's one of the 9 things that I said. So yes, that is one of the things you do. You look to see if they are similar.
Dude,
well, that's
are
you kind of important.
Are you insane?
Shut up.
How do you determine similar things come from each other? You look at if they're similar. Dude.
Yes, that is one of the things that you do, Jim Bob. You look to see if they are similar. That is very important when trying to find if an old thing is similar to a new thing. You look to see if they are similar.
What was my question?
That is comparative anatomy.
What did I ask?
Right? The next part is you do some kind of genetic analysis if that's available. Right? That's another way to help. One of the things that you do, right? You can do genetic analysis if there is DNA available. Rare, but sometimes the case. Right? Okay.
Okay. So
any questions on that?
No, I'll just summarize what happened here. Is I asked, how do you look at
any questions on that?
Shut up. You look at two things.
Any questions?
No. You look at two things that are similar. You dig up something and it looks similar to this other thing. And I asked, how do you determine that similarity?
I'm answering.
Dude,
I'm in the middle of answering that question, dude. No, I'm in the middle of answering that question.
This is a good opportunity. Go ahead, Jim Bob and Craig, if you can give Jim Bob a chance to finish. And then likewise, though, Jim Bob, to be fair, there are occasions where you've interrupted Craig. So I do want to call out.
Oh, yeah, I'm just giving the energy back that I've been getting, James. I hope you understand that. Jim Bob instantly started interrupting, so I've gone FTFE on him. He is the one that's decided how this debate's gone completely.
Thank you. That's a compliment.
So, Jim Bob, if you can control your impulses, then
I'm talking
I will
still.
do it also.
Yeah, I'm still talking.
No, I was talking there, right? If you, Jim Bob, can control your impulses, then I will do the same. The debate is in your hands.
Okay, cool. So when I asked, when you find something, a skeleton, and it looks similar to something that exists today, how do you determine the similarity equals it came from this, the thing we have today comes from this thing, being that today there are similar things that live alongside each other, right? And so the question is, how do you draw from similarity, similarity in jaw structure, similarity in anatomy, similarity in bone structure, all the things you listed? The answer I got from Craig is you look at their similarities.
As one of the things, yes. Yeah, absolutely. As one of the things.
That's a good answer to you?
Yes, yeah, because that is one of the things you do. Look at the
Okay.
similarities. That
Okay.
is very important.
Okay. Okay. So I just want the audience to
Right?
understand when I ask the question, when you look at things that are similar, how do you determine that one came from the other? And the answer is you look at how they're similar.
You compare the similarities. Yes, Jim
Okay.
Bob.
Okay.
You do comparative
Okay.
anatomy, Jim
Okay.
Bob.
Cool. Cool.
No, just Jim Bob, I'm talking. Once again, you just interrupted me. Remember, the debate is in your hands. So if you can have impulse control, I will do the same. This is now the part where I talk. Okay? So, yes, you absolutely 100% compare them. You look at the similarities. You see, oh, well, this tooth is very similar to that in this specific way. Oh, that's very interesting. That's one of the things you do. That's one of the things that helps you come to the conclusion. Another thing you can do is once you've done that, is some genetic analysis if the DNA is available. That can help you see if they are the same.
Okay. Okay.
So that is the next part we're on to is genetic analysis if available. Because yes, looking to see if they are similar instead of just, well, they're kind of similar. You actually study very carefully. Oh, they're definitely similar. So let's see if there's other similarities, like some genetic similarities.
So
Do you agree with that?
yeah, it sounds like you're saying to determine whether or not similarities prove that one thing comes from the other, you study more similarities.
No, science doesn't deal in proofs. You should please understand that.
I understand
There
that.
is no such thing as scientific proof.
I'm using it colloquially.
Okay, right, cool. Well, we're having a scientific discussion.
Okay, let's get more
not
granular,
science.
Craig, because this will keep circling
Well,
around.
I asked the question there, bud, to be fair.
What's the question?
The question was, do you agree that after doing comparative anatomy, as in studying to confirm if they are similar, the next step that you could do if available is some kind of a genetic analysis? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that would just be looking at more similarities.
Yes, to see if they are the same, to see if that species came from that species.
No, we still
You
haven't
would
got.
compare.
No.
That's one of the things that we would do next.
still didn't
is
get there.
Genetic analysis, right?
No.
If we want to know if that is what this cat came from, you would compare the DNA and look for DNA that is similar to the old one. Now, here's the thing. You can look at old DNA, right, and compare it to new DNA. And the difference will be there will be new bits added. There will be new bits of information, right? But you can go, oh, that strand of DNA, that exists exactly here. And you can then say, oh, they're 99% similar.
Craig, okay,
right?
Craig, okay, so is it true from an evolutionary view that there is something in the cat ancestry common that doesn't look like a cat, that's not similar to a cat?
Sorry, ask that question again.
Inside the evolutionary view, is it true that there is an ancestor of the cat that isn't similar to the cat?
Oh, if you want to go back before the, like...
Before cats?
Before even mammals and stuff, you know.
Well, no.
Right, to answer the question specifically,
Dude.
everything looked different at some point.
Okay.
There is an ancestor of cats that looked completely nothing like cats.
Okay, cool.
There's an ancestor of man that looked nothing like man. In fact, they're the same ancestor.
Got you. So, okay, if what you're proving that one thing came from the other and the criteria you're using is similarity in phenotype, skulls, DNA, and all these things, but your assumption under... your assumption under evolution is that if you go back a little bit further, there's something that's not similar to a cat in their phenotype, in their structure, in the way they look. Then if you're not using similarity at that point, how do you come to the conclusion that there's a thing that is a predecessor of the cat that's not a cat?
Well, again, at that point, you would say, so let's take the proto-cat fossil, okay, and then compare that to a fossil from even earlier. You would do the same thing. Between the proto-cat fossil and the proto-proto-cat fossil, you would do comparative analysis between them. You would have a look for similarities that show that this could have possibly come from that. You would, again, if possible, do some kind of DNA thing, or morphogenics by using 3D imaging, fossil stratigraphy, biography, all these things that each step of the fossil, right? It might be that a fossil from a really, really long time ago doesn't look like its genetic predecessor. It doesn't look like that.
So how do you know it is if it's dissimilar?
They have changed so much.
How do you know it's the predecessor then if it's not similar?
Like I said, you look at the line, right? It might be similar. It might have similarities to the proto-cat, but not similarities to the current cat.
How do you know it is the cat, the proto-cat, if it's dissimilar?
No, I just said it might have similarities to the proto-cat.
If it's
but not to...
if it's not similar.
Well, again, well, you would compare it to another line of the fossil.
What? Look,
You just keep going back.
Yeah, you just keep assuming.
comparing
Yeah, I
older
got
and
it.
older and older
Yeah.
fossils,
Look-
and you look for similarities between those, showing that these similarities went on in the genetic line, in the diversity.
look,
There's so many ways of studying to see if things are similar.
It's really-
right? But that's the thing, right? The big thing, Jim Bob, is that we don't have a time machine, right? And we can't.
you
go
just got to
back
make it
and
up. Yeah,
100
I agree.
No,
You
no.
got to make it up.
Well, science is about assumptions. You have to.
So you agree
make
it's a
an
totally
for
assumption.
science.
Gotcha. Evolution
Science
is assumption.
is all assumptions.
That's great.
All of science is assumptions.
Great. So it's not a fact.
That is the foundation of science is making assumptions
agree.
and testing those assumptions.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So what we do, we have made this assumption based on all the evidence and inferences that we've got. We have made the assumption that there is this thing called evolution, right? That's our hypothesis. From let's say that our observation in this case is literally all the stuff that you and I have talked about, all the different proto-cat and pre-proto-cat, all of the fossils, all the similarities, all the non-similarities. We've taken all of this evidence, right, and we have just formed the hypothesis that there is this thing called evolution that is the adaptation to processes, right? The next step is to try and falsify that hypothesis. So the only way that we can falsify this hypothesis is by doing tests within our own lifetime, because that's we don't live over.
But Craig,
right?
if every fossil you find, you already call it a transitional fossil. How could you possibly falsify that
Everything's-
statement? Yeah, I know. How could you falsify?
wait, we're
Dude,
not trying to
hold
falsify,
on. Let me fucking get a question out.
Sorry, apologies. I didn't mean. I'm just saying, Jim Bob, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I do apologize. I was just trying to clarify the question. I am sorry.
Okay,
Please don't get
I
so
forgive
angry.
you. So, how can you falsify something if you find a fossil and you just assume it has to be in the line of some ongoing transition of types of animals? If everything is a transitional fossil and you go in with that assumption, how could you falsify that?
Well, the thing is, of course, everything is transitional. We're transitional, right? Everything is transitional.
That's the assumption.
And the point that yeah, exactly, right? So
How do
that's
you
what we
falsify
have to
it?
test by testing it, by making a prediction.
How do
right?
you falsify it?
I've just told you by
What
making a prediction.
What
and
prediction?
Testing the prediction.
What prediction?
Well, the prediction is that we can go back to the E. coli. The prediction is that if this is what evolution is, and there is a progression, then we can test if organisms can adapt to pressures in environment, right? That is what our assertion is from all of the evidence that we've got, is that organisms adapt to pressures in their environment. So that is our hypothesis. So we have to try and falsify that hypothesis in a way that we can. And the most conclusive way that I've seen of trying to falsify that hypothesis is the E. coli test that's been going on since 1988, where they got a particular strain of E. coli that was resistant to most things, and they created a solution that would destroy it, right? And over time, the stronger bits of that E. coli were the ones that survived and propagated, adapted to that environmental pressure. So then they increase the strength
Craig,
of the
I got
resistive
it.
thing, and it goes on and
I got
on
it,
and on.
I got it.
That is how we test that hypothesis.
Okay, hold on. Isn't it possible, logically and practically, for E. coli reacting and overcoming stimuli? Isn't it possible that that could exist and be true, and a proto-cat isn't true?
We don't know.
Is it possible?
This is the way that we test our hypothesis. Our hypothesis, the reason we did that test is because of our hypothesis of evolution.
I'm going to ask it again. You're not answering the question. So if is it possible?
Yes, it is possible that exists without that being a thing.
Okay.
But the point is that is our test of that hypothesis.
Then that doesn't. No, that's a
We are
contradiction.
40 to
no, it's not.
attack.
Yes,
We are
it is.
Today
simply
marks the
no, it's not. We are
250th
simply
anniversary
testing the
of the Battle of
hypothesis
Lexington
of if
and Concord.
organisms
If
adapt
anyone
to
is still
environmental
wondering
pressures.
why that
Because
all
that's
went
what we
down,
are
Craig
claiming
just showed
evolution
you.
is.
Look.
We're not claiming it. Hold on. We're not claiming that evolution is some magical thing where a fish becomes a monkey or anything like that.
Okay.
We are simply claiming that every single organism on Earth will adapt to the environmental pressures that it
Okay,
exists
I
within,
understand,
right?
Craig.
Whether that happens
Dude,
slowly or over a long time,
Craig,
we can only test the
Craig,
hypothesis of it actually
Craig,
happening.
for an organism, whether it's multicellular or tiny and single, if an organism reacts to stimuli and adapts, isn't it the case that it has to first be itself? In other
Well,
words,
it's itself because of the adaptations that it's previously
hold
had.
on. For a larger animal like a
Wait, you asked the
cow
question.
to react to stimuli and respond to it accordingly, right? Doesn't the cow have to already be a cow? Yes or no?
The cow is a cow because of its adaptation to stimuli.
So it wasn't a cow, and the reaction to stimuli made it a cow?
Yes.
Interesting. So what was it before it was a cow?
Whatever the ancestor of that was, I don't know
Great.
the exact
Okay,
name.
this is science now. How do you prove that an external?
No, it's not science. You don't prove in science.
How
just
do you,
so you're aware.
dude? I already established that we use that colloquially. How do you demonstrate that an external stimuli can be introduced to one organism type and the reaction over time is to become another organism?
Yeah, I already answered that by doing the E. coli experiment, or we can go back to the underground, the London Underground mosquitoes, which literally became a different.
What's the new species?
It's a different species.
What is it called?
Mosquitoes.
Oh, it's a mosquito, but it's not a mosquito.
No, it's a completely different.
Oh, it's a
species
mosquito, but
of
it's not a mosquito.
Like you and I are mammals, right? But we're very different. Cats and us.
Is
are
that
both
a
mammals,
mosquito?
Very different.
Oh, Craig,
right?
Craig,
There's
Craig,
different species
Craig,
of mosquitoes.
Craig,
right? The point is, no, don't keep saying Craig,
Craig,
when I'm talking. It's very
Craig,
no.
hold
I'm
on.
talking.
One claim at a time.
Jim Bob,
one
please,
claim at a time,
no,
buddy.
I'm talking. I'm talking.
I asked
If
how,
Jim Bob,
dude. No, you
if
need
Bob, let me
clarify.
answer
No,
the question.
you.
I need to.
Sorry,
Jim Bob,
guys.
you're asking a
I'm
question?
so sorry.
Fuck,
All right,
dude.
forgive me. First of all, I love both you guys. I appreciate you're both passionate. So if I ever sound cranky, I just hope you know I appreciate you guys, and I actually do appreciate your spiritedness. But just to be sure, do you guys want to do a different type of format? Like, let's say something like, let's say like 2 minute, back and forth. Do you want to go back to like a
30
very
seconds.
strict?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that. That's cool.
Sure. I got the timer set.
Okay, so when you use the mosquito, the universal of mosquito maintains even if the type of mosquito changes and can't procreate with the previous mosquito. When I brought up the cow, what you said was the cow was once not a cow. That's different than saying a mosquito has a different type of mosquito that follows, okay? Now you're making this giant leap between cow and a previous thing that wasn't a cow. And I asked, can you introduce something to the non-cow where the reaction to the stimuli, it becomes not a cow? And you said, we do it all the time. Look at these mosquitoes. And then you go on to say...
And 30 seconds is up.
Yeah. Leo, it's still called a mosquito because that's what we're calling it. We could call it something else. We are just still calling it a mosquito. We could change the name. We could call a proto-cow.
Can we call it a cow?
A cow.
Could we call the mosquito? Can we call the mosquito?
My 30 seconds.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I forgot about the format. My bad.
Yeah. You can call it whatever you want. The fact is, it has become a different species. It is something that is unable to breed with the other mosquitoes. It probably should have a different name because it's no longer part of that same species. So, what was a cow? Before it was not a cow, it's just a name that we have given it. It is still a different species because of adaptations to environmental pressures.
Okay. It sounds like that under the evolutionary view, the term species is actually not an objective term. It's it's basically a nominalist view that there's only particular animals that are ever changing. And so when we point to a cow, we're only arbitrarily calling it a cow because it's actually in the process of changing to being not a cow, right?
Everything's changing. You're right. That's kind of the point that we had earlier, Jim Bob, is that everything is
so Hinduism.
Because
so you're a Hindu.
I'd say I'm more of a Buddhist, if anything. I'm trying to be anyway. But the point is, everything is transitional because we are constantly changing. Humans, insects, fish, everything is constantly adapting to the environmental pressures that we exist in.
Okay.
That's just the fundamental fact of life, and that's all evolution is. And that doesn't even go against God or anything, because God could have set that process in action. But the fact is, we do see species adapting to environmental pressures. You go back to to Charles Darwin and the Galapagos Islands with the finches. Over the decades that he kept going back to that island, he saw that the finches change from one type of finch to another that
That's
then
a
had a
contradiction.
different name. It's not.
So if evolution has a contradiction in it, right?
There's no what's the contradiction?
The contradiction is to make the claim that evolution happens assumes these universal categories called species or populations of species.
Those are just names.
I understand. Hold on a second. If premise one is evolution relies on the assumptions of universal species, types of animals that are themselves and not other things, and premise two is there's no such thing as species, types of species, because everything's always changing, right? So
yeah,
these two can't coexist.
Well, let's just take the labels of species and everything out of it. It's kind of irrelevant. That's just biological terminology to try and identify things, right? The fact of it is, if you remove all the labels, what we see is every organism on Earth adapts to the environmental pressures that it lives in. If it doesn't do that, it dies.
Craig, if
it doesn't exist anymore,
I understand.
right? The species dies out.
Like
right?
progressives.
Okay, yeah, funny.
So that's 30 seconds. So if it's true that you could just as well call the next mosquito in your example not a mosquito, why would you assume the first one's a mosquito, Craig?
Because it's, again, the mosquito is just a name that we gave it. It could be, and we could call it Fred. It really doesn't matter.
No,
right?
we're talking about the word.
That is just a name that we have given that particular thing.
We're not talking about the word mosquito. Okay, that's the symbol we use in sound. I'm not talking about that, Craig. I'm actually talking about the universal category of what a mosquito is. Now, when I point to a mosquito, Craig, are you saying that I'm actually not certain it's not a cat?
I mean, it's got genetic similarities to a cat.
Can I call a mosquito a cat?
If you want to call a mosquito a cat, you can do it. No one's
under the evolutionary view. Is it consistent to be able to call a mosquito a cat?
No.
Why not?
Because they are at this point different species.
That's a contradiction.
It's not. That's the thing. They are.
You contradicted yourself.
Remove the word species. They are different organisms with different DNA that look and sound and act different. This particular setup of organs and skeletons and muscles and fibers and hair, we call that a cat. Particularly Frisbee, that's my black cat. But this particular bundle of organs and fibers and probably some kind of exoskeleton or mosquito, right? We call that a mosquito, right? They are both, if we want to break it all down, they both exist of the same things. They're both made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. It's just the arrangement of them are different, and that arrangement of them is a particular arrangement.
Well, it's not.
The environmental pressures that it's existed in.
Craig,
we'll do
Craig,
30 seconds from Jim Bob.
Craig, if the particular arrangement is always changing, you don't have a universal arrangement of these things. That's a contradiction.
I never said there was a universal.
You said these.
I said we're all
30
made
seconds.
of the
30
same
seconds.
thing.
30 seconds. Remember.
Yeah, sorry, I was just responding to you.
If the thing you're pointing to, you said we're all made of the same things, and it's just the way we're arranged. The atoms and molecules are arranged, and this one thing called the cat is arranged in a certain way. But under evolution, it's actually not. It's not static. It's actually always changing. So it's actually a nominalist view. Hold on, I'm almost done. It means that the thing you're calling a cat actually isn't holding its identity over time. It's molecules and things are changing over time, and there never is a static thing called a cat. There's only a particular thing that happens to be arranged to look like this other thing called a cat. This is nominalist cringe, bro.
I mean, that's getting down to a little bit of philosophy and stuff, and I kind of understand your point. But the fact is that that particular arrangement of atoms and protons, neutrons, electrons exists because of the previous arrangement. Was a result of the environmental pressures that the previous arrangement, right? And these arrangements have created communities that then breed amongst themselves and create new arrangements. And we're all made of the same stuff, but the reason we exist in this particular form is because of are group of stuff adapting to environmental pressures in a particular way. Oh, we are stuff. Come on.
I know.
Jim Bob, you and I exist exactly the
Okay.
same. We are made of the same thing, stardust.
Well, you
We
and
all
I,
exist
no,
because of that.
well, actually, Craig, you saying you and I assumes a category that evolution has to deny. So you're in another contradiction.
No, it doesn't.
Are we humans?
I definitely am.
Okay, is there a point where we're not
At least
humans?
my mum told me. Well, you and I won't ever not be a human.
Okay,
but
is there any
our descendants could not be humans.
Okay.
They couldn't be known as something else.
Okay, got you. So is there a moment where something becomes human from not human under the evolutionary view?
Well, humans first really appeared as Homo sapiens about 200,000 years ago. Before that, they weren't considered Homo sapiens. They were whatever was before Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, and things like that. We categorize Homo sapiens by the developmental process of the species, and that is just a part of the journey that our particular arrangement of stuff has had to go along.
Okay, and so from your view, could you is your view that you could introduce something, an external stimuli to humans where they become no longer humans? Naturally.
Over time.
Naturally.
Over time, yeah, right. So let's say there was a massive drought that lasted for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? And most humans died out, right? But the humans that survived were the ones that were able to maybe live on very little moisture or draw moisture from the air. If breatharian's not real or whatever, but the ones that survived were the ones that were able to sustain themselves on the least amount of moisture, right? Now their children would have some kind of thing that would allow them to live in that environment better, and it might be slightly different from before. And as their children have children, and their children have children, the adaptation to living in a place with a drought might change how the species looks. You might get smaller. Our brains might reduce. We might look very different then to what we consider a human now, because over the millennia, the children, the ones that survived, are the ones that had this mutation that allowed them to adapt to a different environmental pressure, and eventually that environmental pressure could change the way that people look, because we exist like this because this works good for now, for the world we live in, right? But there might be a world where this form isn't the ideal form. The ideal form looks very different, and the environmental pressures will go towards that, and the ones that survive are the ones that head towards that ideal form that reacts to the environmental pressures the best. So even though it's still human along the way. Okay. It might look very different to us now to what we.
So it's all human. So everything before human is actually human. It's just we just arbitrarily call it not human, but it's actually the long process of the human.
To be what we are now, everything, we have the DNA of everything that's existed before. Human, again, it's just a label that we give ourselves.
I got you. So this is another problem, and it is a philosophical problem, because you do need some philosophy to do science, and you definitely need philosophy to argue about evolution. The problem with it is that once you get into what the consequences, the entailment of the view, it's that anything you're pointing to that's changing from one thing to another is a contradiction, because there's no such thing as one thing and the other. It's all one continuous process.
But that's not a contradiction.
It is.
That's just that is just how it is. At one point it was this.
There's no identity.
Yeah, but we have to take snapshots in time, right?
But it's false.
If we take a snapshot in time today, the snapshot in time today shows you and me and James and everyone watching as humans, as sharing mostly the same DNA, right? But if we extend that snapshot to cover 10,000 years, it's going to look a lot different. Then we extend that snapshot to cover 1,000,000 years. It's going to look even more different. It's going to be, one end to the other is going to look very, very different. It's about time.
Craig, I agree with you that you're taking an arbitrary snapshot, but what I'm asking you is, if you zoom out to full scale, to the point where you can't even see Earth, right? Like everything's tiny. Isn't it true that from the evolutionary view, if you go to deep time level view of it, there's actually nothing really called a human? That just happens to be a micro shot in time, a framework of what we are right now. But on the long stream of things, across time, assuming common ancestry goes all the way back to like, bananas and simple things that share similar structural things as us. Isn't it true that everything's everything from the evolutionary view?
Give me a sec. I'm just running that through my head. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Everything is everything because we share a common ancestry with everything, but it's the particular environmental pressures that our species, our group, what our category, whatever you want to call it, has taken to then be what we are. Yeah, we all came from the same thing, but there's been branches. Things have had to change, and there's many different reasons for that. Like you look at say you go back millions of years when the continents were all together, Pangea or something, right? Us humans, whatever you want to call it, would have had to be rather similar because it was all one continent, it was all kind of in one place. But then as those continents started spreading apart to go into colder parts, to warmer parts, the humans that were on those islands became very different. I mean, like you compare Eskimos and stuff to people from South Africa. They've got differences within their genetics. Eskimos can survive in the cold a lot better. South Africans are much more adapted to heat and things, and droughts and stuff like that than Eskimos. And that is kind of showing that evolution happens even within our own species because they're very different, right? And then you can look at the DNA. You could say, well, you've got African DNA, you've got Dutch DNA, you've got but we're all still humans. But we can still, even within the 200,000 years that humans have been around, we can still see the differences in us. And if you let those differences continue over millions and millions of years, let's say Eskimos or the people that lived in the completely cold, they got isolated from the people in the warm for millions of years. Over those millions of years, the people from the cold and the warm places would probably end up looking very different and being very different. They might not even be able to breed anymore because they've adapted their bodies the best way to use the least energy in those environments.
Okay. Let's take something more at the granular level, like a liver. Okay. Would you agree that a liver has a function in the body?
Yeah. Wait, what does the liver do?
It processes toxins.
Right. Yeah.
It also produces some other things. I
always get the liver and the kidney confused.
Yeah, no worries. Me too. So if that is a function, from the evolutionary view, the organism that the liver's inside of, according to evolution, once didn't have a liver, right?
Yeah. Well, you can look back at and see vestigial organs, like pre-organs starting to exist. Because the kidney, the liver's got a very specific function of filtering out toxins, but there might have been a less efficient version of that wasn't as organized in a previous version of our species, Homo erectus or whatever.
Okay.
But as we've needed to start to filter out more toxins, the ones that are able to do that better with more developed livers are the ones that then survived better.
Okay.
So the liver became more of a specific organ rather than just kind of a bundle of cells.
Okay, so you're saying there was a proto-liver that was a liver 101 that still processed and did something with toxins, right?
Yeah, like you can look at fish that live really deep down, right? In the Mariana Trench and stuff. They've still got, it's not eyes, but they've got what we could see, what would develop into eyes. They've got cells that are sensitive to photons and stuff, right? It's not eyes like we would recognize it in any way, but we can see how what they've got would have, if they had the environmental pressure of having more light, of developed into something that was better at absorbing that light.
Okay.
We can see the similarities. That does the same thing as our eye, but
I understand. I'm just because the reason I ask is when I ask, is there a time where the organism that has a liver was something else and didn't have a liver, and you said, yeah, there was a previous thing, but it had a type of liver. It was just a simple version, which I would just start the question over and say, let's take that simple version. Was there a time where the organism didn't have the simple version of the liver that did its is
Probably,
simple.
yeah.
Okay. So under the
Yeah.
evolutionary view, wouldn't it be reasonable to ask what's the mechanism under evolution that where an organism that doesn't have anything even close to a liver develops a functioning thing with a purpose inside the body?
Right. Okay, so let's say there's a bundle of cells just happily existing, but this bundle of cells is very reactive to a particular chemical, right? It gets in contact with this chemical and it destroys the cells in some way, right? But this bundle of cells is multiplying and multiplying, and during that multiplication, one of the bundle of cells has a slight mutation in it, where that mutation means that it's more resistant to that chemical that destroyed the cells previously, right? So now that cell exists in an environment with something that can hurt it, but it's more likely to survive than the other ones because of that slight mutation that has allowed it to deal with that toxin in a certain way. Now, let's say over millions of years, there's more of that toxin evolving, but the bundle of cells is also evolving, but the environmental pressure is that toxin's there. So their environmental pressure has forced them to that mutation then become a cohesive way of dealing with that toxin. That evolution in a nutshell is accidental, right? It's
Ooh.
an accidental mutation
Okay.
that is the beneficial thing
Okay.
that becomes the
Okay.
adaptation to
I think
the
I
environmental
understand.
pressure.
I understand.
Right?
So it sounds like you're saying the process of evolution is accidental, but
Yeah.
the accidental you're saying accidental processes can produce very strict defined purpose.
Yeah, at 100%. If that accidental mutation actually turns out to be beneficial, right, then that mutation is more likely to be passed on to the next generation because it's beneficial,
What
because it helps them.
under evolution, what evaluates whether something's beneficial or not in the process?
If it helps you survive in an environmental pressure, like I mentioned, with
That's an
this bundle of
evaluation.
cells.
No, but no. I don't know if you get the question. We're post evaluating, and from the human view, we're saying, oh, it's beneficial. The organism, in its simple form, doesn't evaluate whether something's beneficial.
Yeah, right. Okay, I understand. No, the organism itself doesn't know, but the fact that it's had this mutation that has given it a better chance of survival means that that organism and its offspring are the ones that are more likely to survive that particular environmental pressure. Okay. And if they are the ones that have that particular mutation, it's going to be passed on in their genes, and then because that's the thing that's passed on, it becomes more prominent as part of that particular generational path.
Okay, it sounds like what you're saying is when you look at the human body or any other body, you go in and there are these particular mechanisms. Just like an engine, you look in and there's that part, and then they're all connected similar to an engine. You get all these pipes and veins and things. What you're saying is that everything in the body, right, in the human body, let's take veins and arteries and muscle and all these things, developed accidentally, but are consolidated in a very purposeful manner with a purpose inside the body, but they're totally crafted accidentally. But not only individually crafted accidentally, but the connections between them and their logical relations are also accidental, right?
Yeah, that's why we have so many junk DNA is the word for it.
Okay.
If you break down our DNA, there's literally a bunch of stuff that does nothing. It's just there. It's useless to us. But if we look at what it could have been useful in the past when there was different environmental pressures, you understand why it's there.
Okay.
But it's not something that we need to use anymore. The mutations will change which bits of the DNA are being useful.
Useful as purpose, though. How can you have accidental usefulness?
Because it helps you. It's simple as that, right? If hypothetically, the Earth all of a sudden raised 10 degrees, right? But then you had a child, Jim Bob, and that child, for some reason, had a genetic mutation that allowed them to survive in warmer conditions than most humans would, right? Now, a lot of the humans are going to die off because the planet's got too hot for them. But your child has much more of a chance of survival because it's now got this random genetic mutation that has allowed it to survive in warmer temperatures. So that child finds a partner, propagates, that gene has passed on to their offspring, which it's a complete accident, but now their offspring is more likely to survive this environmental pressure. And because they're the ones that are likely to survive, the other ones are going to die out, and that gene will become the dominant one.
Okay. Well, it just seems that even the term accident, is there a way you can tell me a definition of accident, being that you're using it in biology, that doesn't presuppose some type of direction? Because to me, an accident, there's no way to define an accident if it's not some sort of missing of a target. So what is an accident?
Right. Okay, so this goes deep into biology, I guess. When cells split, in the womb or whatever, and they're making themselves, sometimes there might not be a complete bit of DNA made. There might be a slight problem. Might have maybe the person that's carrying the child had a slight nutritional defect which didn't allow this particular part of this child to develop properly. Or maybe that it was literally just DNA is code,
Craig, but
and,
a defect,
when it's copied and copied and copied, it can have glitches and errors in it, and that error can show up as a mutation.
But the thing is, Craig, even the term error or defect assumes that there's a non-defect, which is the target. So when we point to things, right?
That's I get your point.
Okay, but that's what I'm asking is, like, what's an error if there's not a target? And if evolution is accidental, there is no target to say something's an error.
No, you're right. Okay, so again, it's just arbitrary labels that we're given stuff, right? So you and I, we have a definition of what a human is and what normal human DNA is, right? So for us, that's kind of the target, right? But that's just an arbitrary label that we've given, right? So say your and our DNA is the target, but we have an offspring that has slightly different DNA to ours. I guess it's missed the target and under your terminology, and but it's still, the DNA is still basically the same as ours enough that it exists, but it might have an adaptation, a mutation that will help it survive in whatever environmental pressures happen.
Okay, so survival.
Evolution is an accident, right?
Evolution
is an accident.
Evolution, not only the mechanism is an accident and all the things that it produces accidentally, purposefully, that it produces purposefulness accidentally, function accidentally. But not only is that true, but the fact that it gears towards survival and not death is also accidental.
It is in the same way that, like I explained, it's an accident that allows a species to continue surviving. There's species die out all of the time because they cannot adapt to their environmental pressures quick enough.
Okay.
If the environmental pressures change too quick, then the species doesn't have time to adapt. Those mutations aren't appearing, or those mutations just don't happen.
Okay.
Then that species is going to die out. The ones that do have those random mutations, the complete accidental random mutations, that just so happen to be beneficial, are the ones that survive.
So under the evolutionary view, all of the things that are based upon our biology, chemistry, neurology, everything else in between, maybe that we don't even know, you're saying all of that and the effects of which are accidental.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will 100% say, Jim Bob, say evolution, you and I existing here are the result of a billion cosmic accidents.
Okay, do you agree that...
Accidents, that's not a word.
Okay, well, do you agree that from that view that even our reasoning is downstream from this evolutionary process?
Yeah, the reason you and I can sit here having this conversation, having an intellectual discourse, it's an accident. It's a result of a billion accidents.
Okay.
Our consciousness existing the way that it does because of the neurons and stuff. It's all accidental.
Okay. So if...
But you know what? That is amazing. I just want to say, I find that incredible, right? That makes me feel more special than the thought of like a God creating me or something. The fact that I exist because of a billion accidents. That makes me feel amazing.
So does it make you feel amazing to know the entailment of that view is that your own rationality and reasoning is accidental?
Yeah. The fact that I'm able to rationally think things is incredible, right? And I am constantly in awe of the fact that the universe has somehow accidentally come along and ended up with me existing. I find that incredible. I find that awe-inspiring.
Okay.
I find that a testament of the infinite
Okay.
time that the universe has existed.
Okay. So according to you, we're accidentally debating, and all of your reasoning and rationality is accidental, but you're arguing for something, a teleological position that we're heading towards truth or defending truth in a debate.
Teleological. Could you just define that word?
Like purposeful, like there's a higher purpose to what we're doing here, like some sort of super goal or whatever. If we're debating and you hold a view that we're accidentally debating and all of your reasoning and my reasoning is accidental, how would you even know we're going toward truth if there's no towardness? That would assume purpose, but you can't have purpose if everything's accidental.
I disagree. There's nothing.
But that was an accident that you disagreed.
Yeah, but I've still got my purpose. I because of a billion accidents, I can decide my own purpose and my own path.
Accidentally.
Right? Accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The fact that I'm able to think, you know what, I'm going to take my family to Tenerife in 42 days. That was an accident that happened in the cosmic grand scale of things. You know, there was no preset path that was a thing that was going to happen.
Okay.
The fact that I exist to be able to make that decision to take my family away, it's all accidental, but it doesn't change the fact that it's led to me existing able to make that decision.
Okay. So when people study evolution, all those scientists, the people you're appealing to in their studies and their investigation, they're actually demonstrating just an accident. Their activity is accidental. So how would we, if that was true, how would you know that the evolutionary theory and its assumptions are true if they're just the result of accidental firings in people's brains?
That's why we have things like the scientific method.
That we accidentally do.
Hypothesis.
But we do it accidentally.
We accidentally came up with the scientific method,
so
but it's accidentally developed a method that allows us to determine at least what we are able to falsify.
Okay, so when scientists do the scientific method, they're actually accidentally doing it.
Jim Bob, everything's an accident. Every decision that's ever made is an accident. You know, you cannot tell what's going to happen in the future. You know, the fact that you and I exist alone is just an amazing, fantastic accident. You can ask it as many times as you want.
Okay.
Our thoughts, our feelings, our homes, our families, they're all the result of a cosmic accident. Every single thing. But that doesn't change the fact that it exists. We can study it, we can test it, we can think about it. And here's the thing. Here's the most amazing thing. Am I 100% sure that everything about evolution is true? No, absolutely not. And that's the amazing thing about science, right? We might come across something in the future that changes what we know about evolution and how it works. And that excites me, knowing that I don't know everything. But at the moment, this is the best explanation that we've got. We're unable to falsify our own hypothesis to a certain degree that makes us happy with it. So evolution at the moment is the best answer to why we exist as we do today.
Okay. Well, so this is the problem I have. Can you define accident for me?
Oh, come on.
I can pick it up. I'm just like, guess. I'm not holding you to it. I'm just like generally. I actually don't even know, Craig, to be fair. Like, I don't even actually know what it would be defined as. I'm just
something without a predestined path, I think.
Okay. Let me see. Something bad.
I guess I'm trying to define it in context, right?
Yeah, I don't.
You can define accident in I accidentally trip and smash my nose.
Yeah.
But at the same way, the mutation happens accidentally.
Yeah.
I think we all know what accident means.
Well,
it's
actually interesting to figure out what it means, though, because it has so many different uses, like car accident, this and this and this. But the reason I ask, Craig, is like, for any context that I think of the word accident where it's ever used, it's the thing it's pointing to is a misdirection or a missing the mark of something that was intended. And so, being that you hold a view that evolution is accidental, I'm not sure how you're going to actually define accident with having its own positive ontology in a sense without appealing to the thing that it's missing from. So it's like undesirable or unfortunate happening.
No, I wouldn't say undesirable.
Sure, that's
if
fine.
anything, I would right. Okay, let's go with a sorry, someone actually said it in my chat. It was very good. An unintentional consequence.
No intent. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Right.
if it's an unintentional consequence, if evolution is an unintentional consequence, then the thing that's causing evolution, some mechanism, is also an unintended consequence of something before it. And if all of evolution, from your view, is actually unintentional, to me, without exactly telling us how this accidental process produces very purposeful things, like for instance, like I think about like snake venom, like it accidentally produced venom, a very specific type of protein that literally melts the insides of like rats so they can consume them easier, right?
Yeah.
But that was an accident. But we don't have any B12 injection rattlesnakes. You know, when you're going on a hike and you, oh shit, I got bit by a snake, and someone goes, don't worry, those are just it's a B12 snake. It just as well could have developed, right? A B12
right. Well,
snake.
we look at the snake. Why does it have venom? Because there is a mutation that gave it something that could protect itself, and
But that's
that
purpose.
mutation was beneficial.
But that's
well, no,
purpose.
it was accidental. That mutation wasn't purposeful. It wasn't planned.
Is there a
The
purpose
mutation-
in
the
defending
mutation
yourself?
that allowed it to do that was unintentional.
Okay, so
and the fact that it can now defend itself is an unintended consequence. It's a beneficial consequence.
Why does it defend
but it's
itself?
still accidental because it wants to live.
No, but that's purpose.
Well, but again, the ability to defend itself in that way was unintended. It didn't, the species didn't intend to develop that particular mutation. That mutation was just beneficial and allowed it to survive because it's now better at defending itself.
But beneficial.
It didn't plan that. It didn't think that. Beneficial doesn't mean intended.
Beneficial does mean seeking an outcome which assumes intent.
Well, no, it doesn't. Beneficial can be something can be accidentally beneficial.
Yeah, but to say it's beneficial means there's an outcome that you're like seeking.
No, it doesn't.
Even if it's an accident.
No, it doesn't. An accident means you're not seeking the outcome. Jimbo, you can have something that is unintentionally beneficial.
I'm saying
that you didn't plan to happen.
I'm sorry, Craig. You're you're misunderstanding me. It's my fault. When the accident happens, when you say something's beneficial, you're actually making a claim towards something, right? So we're doing it post-diction. We're saying animals in the past, a rattlesnake was once a different snake that didn't have this special protein, and it developed it accidentally. And it also developed fangs that was able to accidentally distribute the accidental venom, right?
Yeah.
And
over time, yes.
And because it accidentally developed a very purposeful thing, it just accidentally used it to its advantage. By the way, the advantage doesn't actually exist. It's also an accident that there's something called an advantage. And it basically put them in a place where they're going to survive, even though there's millions of other snakes that don't have venom and they survive just fine from their accidental.
All the snakes that have that exist now exist because they adapted to the particular environmental pressures. Rattlesnakes, they developed that rattle accidentally, and turns out when they shake it, it scares other things. That's an extremely beneficial adaptation that happened by accident that allows rattlesnakes to survive more than other snakes.
Why do they accidentally keep the thing that accidentally has them survive?
Because that's the beneficial gene.
No,
right?
You can't have both of those.
We can.
No.
We can. Listen, so the rattlesnake, right, that it has a mutation, its offspring has a mutation where it doesn't have that rattle, okay? well, let's say it has two offspring, right? One's got a mutation that doesn't give it that rattle. One's got the it's just it has the rattle like normal. Okay. Now those two snakes go out into the wild. The one that is more likely to survive environmental pressures of predators and stuff is the one that has the rattle, right? Even though there is a random adaptation that took the rattle away, that's probably less likely to survive the environmental pressures. So the reason it stays is because that gene being there is beneficial for that species to continue being there.
Well, no, those are contradictory because
They're really not.
yeah, because if your first step in evolution says the things that we see seem to be beneficial, that is to say it produces outcomes of their survival, was all of those features were produced accidentally. And I ask you, well, isn't it the case that under this fully accidental view that them keeping them there is also accidental? And you say no.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't say no. It is accidental. It depends on the environmental pressures. You know, the mutation that would change whether that snake had a rattle or not, right? That mutation would need to be something that is able to survive in the environment, right? If it isn't able to survive in the environment, then it's not beneficial.
Okay, Craig, here's the thing.
Beneficial does not mean intent.
Craig,
It is an accidental benefit that allows that thing to keep surviving.
Okay.
And the offspring that also have that particular gene and that particular adaptation are more likely to survive. But if the conditions change, say the prey that goes after rattlesnakes, right, dies out for some reason, right, then it's less likely that the rattlesnake's rattle will then continue to be, because there's no reason for that to then be a beneficial thing, because the rattle is to scare off the prey and stuff. But if their prey's gone, then there's no reason why that would exist over a mutation that stopped it existing.
I'll give you a chance to respond, Jim Bob, but just really quick, I want to mention, folks, we only have several more minutes, maybe around 5, 10 at most, before we jump into the Q&A. So if you happen to have a question, well, other housekeeping things, if you happen to have a question, you can tag me with @ModernDayDebate, or you can do a super chat, which will push your question to the top of the list, or you can do the GoFundMe. So if you put in a donation and then let me know it was you, the person who put in the donation just now as we're live with this debate, we will read your question from the live chat if you tag me. And Basil Problem, thanks for your super chat, as well as we have a poll in the live chat on who you found most persuasive in today's debate, in case you didn't see that there. And we'll kick it back over to Jim Bob until the Q&A.
Yeah. So when you look at things like testing an organism's response to stimuli by introducing something, the fact that you can repeat such a thing and you get a result demonstrates that it can't be accidental because it's repeatable. And so it's strange to come to a debate about natural science.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm saying that if something's testable and you come to the conclusion that introducing Y to an organism produces some sort of response that's regular, that you can come to sort of inductive conclusions about, it couldn't be random or accidental because the outcomes couldn't possibly be the same. And if you extrapolate that problem outward to evolution, the assumption that animals develop from other animals over time, and then not only that, but their features like fangs or wings or these things which have functions like a liver accidentally develop, then you actually can't, under the evolutionary view, say mechanism X causes this phenomenon, because that would assume causality, and causality couldn't be accidental causality. You can't repeat causality. You can't argue causality is a thing. X causes Y. If you think everything is accidental, including evolution, then anything you point to in evolution or in science to say that X causes Y, you're saying that's accidentally being consistent. It's accidentally consistent.
Yeah, but we can test that. We can, even if it's an accident, it doesn't stop it being a thing, right? It doesn't stop it existing just because it accidentally happens.
But
and that's the evolution. Yeah, it's accidentally happened, but that doesn't stop it existing. It doesn't stop it still being accidentally beneficial for the species to continue existing. That is the point of evolution. It is random mutations that are beneficial
Can you?
under environmental
Okay,
pressures.
Craig.
It's as simple as that.
Craig, would you agree a mutation? Would you accept the definition of mutation is a random copy or error in the what you called code?
Could be, yes.
Okay. Would you agree that for the most part, mutations, as we define them, they don't add or subtract anything to the organism?
Sorry,
That they're
say that
redundant.
again?
They're redundant. They don't like magically produce some sort of new path that's going to create a feature that's advantageous. Most mutations, as we define them, are nearly 99% copies of existing info. It doesn't add or subtract anything to the genome or do anything special. It's just kind of like a.
Well, it can add things.
Well, that's
the point.
Okay, but
Yeah.
that's in question. Do you agree that for the most part they don't add anything or they don't subtract anything? They're neutral.
And mutations you don't subtract from DNA. That's why we've got junk DNA.
I understand.
It
doesn't-
it's stuff that's left over that we don't
I
need
understand.
anymore because but you add mutations can literally add things to the DNA.
Okay, so is it true that for the most part, I didn't ask what you think that it might do, if it's something might or could do something, right? I'm asking typically what we see is that nearly 99% of mutations are copies of existing. They're either erroneous or just duplicates of existing information in the genome.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a case,
with slight changes.
okay,
Yeah.
so if it's 99% the case that what you called mutations are just copies of existing information, it doesn't add anything new. So when you appeal to, well, there are these moments where a mutation happens and it actually results in something beneficial. Can you name something that's a mutation and you know that the beneficial thing was a result of the mutation itself?
You mean like you want me to tell you some form of evolution that's happened?
I want you to point to a mutation, which is a production of some information, whether it's a copy or not. Can you give me an instance where a mutation resulted in something beneficial, some apparatus or feature?
The London Underground mosquitoes, there was a mutation that allowed it to absorb a certain protein, which meant that it could feed on insects and creatures that existed in the London Underground. Without that mutation that allowed them to absorb that particular protein, they wouldn't have existed in the underground. The mosquitoes would have all died out because they wouldn't have had anything to feed on like mosquitoes above the ground do. So for those mosquitoes, that random mutation that allowed them to absorb that particular protein was extremely beneficial.
Oh.
It was a complete accident,
Okay.
but for that mosquito, for that species of mosquito to continue, its generations going on, that was an extremely beneficial mutation.
Okay, I have to clarify something. It sounded like you said there's a type of mosquito that's able to absorb a type of protein. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the London Underground mosquito
Is able to.
Once these mosquitoes got trapped underground, one of the mosquitoes' offsprings had a mutation.
How did you know that?
Because they've studied all the remains and everything of the London Underground. I can send you the studies on London Underground mosquito. I don't have to go through the
Wait,
entire thing.
okay,
This is what
hold on a
happened,
second.
right?
Oh, Craig, just sorry to interrupt, but it's a clarification. Do you agree that an adaptation in real time for an organism or an animal isn't identical to a mutation?
Well, the adaptation is a result of the mutation.
I know, but can adaptations occur in real time that aren't the result of a mutation?
No, you only have an adaptation because of a mutation over generations.
Okay, but if you see an animal do something new in real time,
That's not evolution. That's just an animal learning to do something. Evolution is generations displaying
and how
different
did you
traits.
know it was a specific mutation that allowed the mosquito to learn this new thing called absorbing a particular protein?
It didn't learn it. It just happened. There was a mutation in one of the mosquito's offsprings
Mm-hmm.
that allowed that mosquito to absorb a particular protein. Right. Before that, mosquitoes could not feed on the creatures. They couldn't absorb red blood. right? That's what the mutation specifically was. It was a protein that allowed them to absorb red blood cells from creatures and stuff, right? I don't know how that happened. But I can send you all the papers on the London Underground mosquito. But that random mutation in one of the mosquito's offsprings allowed that to happen. So that mosquito then fed on creatures, and then it itself had offspring which had that beneficial mutation. The ones that didn't have that mutation were less likely to be able to receive nutrients and all died. So only the offspring that had this mutation were able to continue living in the London Underground, and the mutation, they continue to mutate and have different things happen to them, and there were so many mutations and adaptations that they lost a lot of the abilities of the mosquitoes that exist above ground, so much so that they are very different species and can no longer interbreed.
Okay. Would you call what you just referred to, if I read this, would you agree that what you're describing with the mosquitoes is a change in an organism caused by a modification of a gene expression?
Yeah, there was a random mutation that changed the DNA, that changed the genes.
Well, no, hold on.
That change was beneficial
Sorry,
in the long run.
Do you agree there's a difference between a modification to gene expression and an alteration of the code itself?
What,
Is there a difference between a change, an alteration to expression, gene expression, and an alteration to the genetic code itself? That there's two different things.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's why I would ask is, like, in that instance, I would want to know, is that an example of gene expression changed by modification or the alteration of the genetic code itself? The reason I ask is if evolution is assuming the latter needs to be the thing as the mechanism, then the former wouldn't really be an example.
Evolution is simply saying whatever the mutation is, if that mutation leaves a beneficial trait, that trait is more likely to have generations that can survive the environmental pressures.
Okay.
That's it, right? And within the mosquitoes, the mutation, whatever it was, it gave them an adaptation that allowed it to survive on things that they wouldn't normally need to have. But that was the only source of nutrients. So the mosquitoes that didn't have that adaptation died out. And that is evolution in progress. It's showing that this random mutation was beneficial to the environmental pressures it was in, and that is what survived. All the other mosquitoes died out. It was only the ones with this mutation that managed to survive, and over decades became a very different species.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it didn't. If you call it a different species because it has a different type of DNA thing going on, and it no longer can reproduce with its previous predecessor. That still doesn't get you to this view that one thing you call a species over time becomes another entirely different universal thing, like a completely universal thing.
But again, then we can go back to comparing fossil records to fossil records to fossil records, and just going back in time and comparing similarities. And it goes back to the beginning of the conversation we had with the 9 things that I listed that are all ways of testing the hypothesis.
You know how many animals you're assuming are a part of the evolutionary process? All animals, right?
Every single animal, everything, every organism that exists is a result of evolution.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's a clarifying question. So, and one of your go-tos is fossils, right? You would agree that fossils are pointing to vertebrates?
Yeah, but fossils are one of the bits of evidence for evolution. They're not the be-all and end-all.
I understand, but it's the one. But
it's just one of the things.
But you understand that most animals aren't vertebrates, right?
Yeah.
So there's no skeletal fossil for most of animals or invertebrates. So the standard you use, the criteria for transitional fossils being often a go-to, not just from you, but many evolution proponents and defenders, the fossil being pointing to mostly skeletal things and drawing out some similarities and then making some sort of conclusion about the matter. You couldn't really do that with the majority of animals, which don't actually have bones.
Yeah, but you just look at the adaptations and mutations that have happened over time and compare them. This is why we will test the hypothesis in whatever way we can. But like I said, Jim Bob, right? This is just the best answer we have at the moment. This is just the best explanation. There's no alternative that gives a better explanation for what's happening than the current explanation and scientific theory of evolution, right? But again, that's the wonderful thing about science. We could discover something which changes everything we know that we think we understand.
Okay, what could be discovered?
We're willing to change.
Okay.
What could we discover? I don't know.
No,
can't see the
I was
future.
finishing a statement. Sorry to interrupt. It's that this. It's like, what could be discovered about fossils that would then move the claim that all fossils are transitional out of the equation? What could be discovered about fossils
No
that
idea.
would move it so that you couldn't just call everything transitional?
Absolutely no idea.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Because to me, going in and saying everything's transitional and starting with that assumption and then looking at similarities and being like, look, they're similar. It must have come from the other thing that looks similar. My question would be, well, let's say all of the similarities were still there. How would you determine that they didn't come from each other?
I'll give you a chance to respond, Craig, and then we'll actually jump into the Q&A.
Again, you just look at the records that we have. We just look, right, okay, so these are similar to this. This shows a lot of things that we think are similar. We can test the DNA. We can look at the morphology. We can look at previous records and previous records. We just keep going back. But the most important thing will always be just testing the hypothesis in whatever way we can. Right? And again, science is never 100% certain about anything. But this is just the best explanation that we have right now. I don't know what could come along to change that. Something could, because who knows? But I don't know what that is. But right now, this is the best explanation we have. It makes sense. It's logically sound. There's experiments that fail to falsify all our hypotheses about evolution. And if something comes along that changes that, I am the person that is willing to follow the evidence.
You got it.
Accidentally, though.
Yeah, always accidentally.
Okay.
So many accidents. And I want to say, folks, thank you guys. I want to give a quick update. As you can see at the bottom right of your screen, a couple of quick housekeeping things. As mentioned, Uncensored America is putting on this tremendous debate, Andrew Wilson versus Apostate Prophet. It is going to be amazing. It's April 28th. Tickets are linked below. Get your tickets now before it's too late. Don't risk forgetting. You have got to be there. I will be there in person. Andrew will be there in person. Apostate Prophet will be there in person. Sean Simanko, who started Uncensored America, will be there. Come hang out, meet people, have fun, make friends. Tickets are linked in the description box, and there's a free option. So if you're like, hey, I don't know, like that's actually an option. So that's really cool. And we, as I had mentioned earlier, in the stream, are raising funds for camera lenses for that debate. So we are trying to get these camera lenses because back in DebateCon 4, people were like, James, like modern day debate, like you guys been around for a while.
Guys, I accidentally
brand name, and your audio and video quality sucks ass. And I was like, oh, really? Because I didn't, I don't know what the difference is.
Scientific
and they were like, yeah, you have to get better cameras and better audio. And it's true. Looking back, I'm like, wow, that was kind of shitty. But we are no longer running with shitty audio and video, as we basically, Sean from Uncensored America has been my camera guy. So for DebateCon 5, if you notice, like, wow, their video and audio doesn't look shitty anymore. That's because of Sean. And he said, hey, these lenses that we are renting for DebateCon 5, we should buy them. We will share them between our organizations. So when we host debates, or like Sean just hosted their event with like Myron Gaines, is all these events, we will share those camera lenses. And it definitely makes more sense because we're going to use them all the time. It just makes sense to buy them rather than rent them. Otherwise, you rent them so much that you paid more than what you would have for buying them. We've raised, in the last hour, we jumped up from about $500 to about $600. So we're at 600 even. So thank you for those of you who have supported that GoFundMe.
Yeah, everyone go over and vote.
Description box, and
optically, it's important. Okay,
of the live chat right now.
Go quick, run over there.
Appreciate
vote,
that support.
Come back.
And thank you to those 19 donors who've already jumped in on that, as well as what I'm going to do here is jump into the Q&A. Want to say a couple of things.
Worse
Folks, we appreciate our guests. If you want to hear more from our guests,
let's get those.
What are you waiting for?
Let's hit that goal.
Check out their links below. Made by Jim Bob and Craig are linked in the description box. The guests are the lifeblood of the channel, so we do appreciate them and highly encourage you, even if you disagree with them, hey, go to their channel and harass them a little bit, give them a little action that way, and a little engagement.
Bring
Throw
it.
your poop at them. And want to say though, first, thanks for your question. This one coming in from, and let me just make sure I got this sorted. Is the first one Rachel Wilson, thanks very much, says Craig is very
Yes, red
good
pill.
telling
Highlights. That's
stories,
correct.
but he hasn't explained how adaptation produces a complete
Can you
and
guys
total
still hear me
change
on your
of
side?
kinds.
Yeah, I very much did.
Can you guys hear me?
Many years,
Can you guys hear me?
the changes could be significant. It's we see evolution happening on a smaller scale
Okay.
where there is very big changes in a subspecies, and over time when we look at the fossil records and everything, we can see how they can change from one entire species to another, one entire kind to another. The evidence of evolution is there, and I've explained the mechanism behind how it could happen very well.
I have a
You got it?
question. Not that it matters now, but in the future, it's a good feature when Craig's talking, he becomes big on the screen. Was there a feature I was supposed to unlock so that when I was talking, I became big on the screen?
Does that
Come
happen?
again? Oh, the way I have it is you guys remain the same size, and occasionally I'll adjust it if you move far away from your camera or closer to your camera. Otherwise, you guys are static in terms of your video
Oh,
feed
because
size.
I see Craig when he talks, he becomes big on the main thing. That's what I was asking.
You mean on your Zoom, Jim Bob?
Yeah. Oh, that's because it's
Yeah, right.
mine.
So
Okay, it's not
you
the.
probably got
Gotcha.
you probably got a setting
Ah,
where
gotcha.
whoever's talking
Gotcha.
appears on the screen.
Thank you. That's
If
fine.
you just click it to view gallery, it will
gotcha.
just stay static for you as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
No worries.
And this one coming in from, do appreciate it. Lewis says, I feel your frustration, Eric. I must have missed that one for the last question. This one from Rachel Wilson. Oh, Alex Stein. Thanks very much.
Hey, Alex.
Said, let's go. And Alex Stein will actually be on in the next debate. So in an hour, we'll start the final debate of the night. Alex Stein versus First Amender. That is going to be high energy.
How many hours you been going for, James?
Huh?
How many hours you been going for?
Next time I do this,
since,
I have to
like 8 a.m. my
I have to
time.
make it so
what
I'm
is that,
big,
like 8
right?
hours? Oh yeah, it is. That's weird. I feel good. I actually feel surprisingly, yeah.
You got to get on my level.
Oh,
I did
accidentally
55 hour
boomered.
stream last time. Come on.
accidentally everything.
Wow.
I accidentally
well,
won.
I'm thinking about
Hey, you
maybe
guys,
like an
go
18-hour
accidentally
stream
vote
next time.
over
How do
for
you-
me, okay?
24. Come on, man it up.
Come on.
Rachel
vote.
Wilson also said, this is bullshit. Craig doesn't know the difference between giving a lesson of nothing, but descriptions and making an argument. This isn't a debate. I probably put a comma in the wrong place. Craig doesn't know the difference between giving a lesson of nothing, but descriptions and making an argument. This isn't a debate.
Well, Rachel, you may have missed the evidence and descriptions of the mechanism of evolution I gave. Actually, very much backing up my claims. Just because you didn't understand them, Rachel, doesn't mean that I didn't do my job. And unfortunately, this does just turn into me educating people that don't understand these basic physics. However, very much looking forward to debating you.
Wow, I really screwed this one up. I could have just clicked and
We lost your audio, Jim Bob.
Oh yeah.
You muted
How's it
yourself.
going?
You got it. This one from the Diesel says the evolution denier doesn't know enough about the topic to know to know what he's looking for as evidence.
Well, that statement said absolutely nothing.
Thank you for that. And Basil Problem says, Craig, why do you think you were qualified to participate in a debate on evolution?
Because I am a man of science. I've studied evolution quite a bit. I may not have degrees in biology or anything, but I've done lots of studies of evolution. I've done a lot of reading on evolution. I'm as qualified as anyone else really that wants to debate it.
Wow. Well, do also want to say, I know that I started the stream with crankiness, as but I do want to give huge credit to Andrew Wilson as he just told me he's like, hey man, he's like, hey, let me do this for you, something that he doesn't have to do. I have to acknowledge and say, hey, like that's really cool. So I do appreciate that, Andrew. You're like, frankly, you didn't, it's true, you didn't owe me. So I do appreciate that big time from Andrew Wilson. So I know
Fine,
that people are
fine,
like,
fine.
man, I expected to see Andrew when I woke up. It was going to be how I was going to start my day, drink some coffee, eat some eggs, and listen to an Andrew Wilson debate. And I know that some people were like unhappy, and so it's true, I was unhappy. I like explained the context, but um I have to say, Andrew, thank you so much for your generosity and making doing this. So
James, I just
um
want to add in that your unhappiness was accidental.
you got
Everything's
it.
accidental.
How do you
Hey,
like
James,
that,
it's good
Craig?
to see that you're no longer holding the mic and moving it around as well.
Oh, and someone asked what they asked if I was using the mic to cover my face on purpose. Yes, because my monstrosity of a face, I'm trying to cover it up. Tiki Tack says, "What a shit show!" And Aulawali, see, can you have Jim Bob explain radiocarbon dating?
Explain radiocarbon dating? No, I
Yeah,
can't in detail explain it. I can't, but Greg can if he wants.
Ooh. I mean,
no,
I wouldn't know how to explain it in detail. It's basically looking at the age of atoms of carbon 14, and seeing how much they've how far the half life has gone. Uh,
I'm wearing my
yeah.
hoodie. You know who says that? Mother Hulda says, I'm pro evolution. Craig needs to chill out. It was Jeb
Hey,
Bush who famously said
I
that.
am chill. I went to Amsterdam recently and I brought the Amsterdam back with me. I'm loving it. And like Jim Bob knows, I was just reacting to him.
Wow. Dylan Dishner says, I would appreciate hearing Craig Steelman Jim Bob's actual critique of evolution.
I didn't really have one. I was kind of he was just asking questions about evolution. Um, if anything, his critique would be that haven't labeled things correctly, so that you can't say this is a species and this isn't. He also thinks there's some contradictions in how evolution would work, but there wasn't really a position that Jim Bob gave specifically. It was more just denial of evolution as it stands.
You got it.
Jim
This
Bob, if
one?
I'm incorrect there, would you please tell me?
Well, you almost got one of them. One critique was it couldn't make its way through fluidly, coherently through the method. You disagree with that. The other one was that nominalist thing where, like, if you say one thing is derivative or downstream from another thing, but yet evolution ultimately holds that there's no such thing as one thing or the other thing. There's no universality in any of these things, which you admitted. Everything is everything. And so if you hold the view that everything's actually one giant thing, then when you claim evolution is this process of things changing from one thing to another, but there's no such thing as one thing or another under evolution, it's a contradiction. I mean, that was a fair critique from my view. Ultimately, the philosophy of nominalism being used to try to buttress evolution, I find kind of hilarious.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Rachel Wilson strikes again, says, until the E. coli turns into something other than E. coli, Craig has no argument, just stories and descriptions.
We can call it something different, just like we do with everything else. Rachel, what you don't understand is they're just labels. All right. We can literally call it a different bacteria, a different species. Um, and again, we can literally look at the fossil records that
He
we have and
he
see
keeps
how
calling
things used to
species,
be
right?
different.
Keeps calling it.
There's we can look at
Keeps
the
using these
geological
terms.
time periods and what's
Species.
happened in the world, compare that to when things existed. We know, you know, there's not billions and billions of cat skeletons and fossils lying around. They look very different. So we can show that things changed how they look over time.
You got it. This one coming in from Jordan says Jimothy is 2 for 2 back to back, made two opponents hide behind ambiguity and completely contort their own positions.
I'll take things that didn't happen for 500, please, Regis.
Wow. Basil Problem says modern day debate. Can you schedule a debate with the premise, quote, is there value in non experts in a field debating whether that field is true or non true?
Say that again.
They said, can you schedule a debate with the premise, is there value in non experts in a field debating whether that field is true or untrue? So basically, they're just saying, like, if you're
Right.
two guys who aren't experts in whatever topic,
It's fallacious anyway. I mean, even if Craig and I didn't know shit, it might limit our ability to debate, but it doesn't
Yeah,
take us out of the equation to be able to debate it.
we've still got opposing views, so there's no reason why we can't have an intellectual discourse, even if we don't hold academic, qualifications in that particular field. There's no reason why Jim Bob and I can't hold a discussion, a debate on our own terms. I mean, does it make a difference into the enjoyment? Yeah, you know what? It's probably going to sound better and more clickable if it says PhD in evolution versus creationist. That's probably going to sound more clicky, right? But it doesn't change the fact that Jim Bob and I can have a conversation and a debate.
you got it. This one from Aluwali Blue Vegan says religion is a plague. Look what it's done to Bob's brain.
Well, actually,
Wow.
that would be an evolution advantage. In fact, I could make a good argument on a separate debate if Craig wants to have it that if evolution was true and everything is derivative of the process, then our own belief in God, even if it was false, would provide some type of beneficial advantageous. The fact that religious people actually multiply more than non-religious actually shows that the religious people, being that it's a plague, are more evolutionarily fit than you little scoundrel. Die out.
Well, to be fair, Jim Bob, that is a slight straw man of evolution because evolution isn't just more babies equals better.
No, I didn't reduce it to that. I just said a part of evolution would have to be that you survive, right? Because that would be what's called beneficial. And fitness, under an evolutionary view, is the ability to produce your offspring, right? Continue your lineage, your DNA, pass it on. That would be multiplication, right? So if religion is a plague and yet it produces more fit organisms, then the guy who just argued that it's a plague, well, bye-bye. Take yourself out of the gene pool.
But it also would produce less fit organisms as well.
Well, if you add what fitness means, I'm just saying fitness ultimately, if the precondition for passing on genes is and survival is reproduction, if all other terms for fitness or unfitness are after that, I'm saying religion has the first and foremost covered better than the non-religious.
Well, yeah, because of the story that you've given it, right?
What story? That religious people produce statistically more. Their offspring is higher at a higher rate than non-religious.
By the story that you've given that is a better thing. It's not necessarily true. It could actually having more of a species could end up with the species then dying out because resources become too scarce for the species. So necessarily having more and even healthier offspring isn't necessarily the evolutionary thing. Let's say, for instance, you had an offspring that was small, tiny, and weak. However, the environmental pressures existed where everyone needed a lot less nutrients because there was a lot less available. That smaller, weaker, less healthy organism is more likely to survive in an environmental pressure where there's less nutrients available.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think we agree. From my view, there's no such thing as better under evolution.
I mean, yeah, it's better for us is what we make better. What we decide is better, right?
Yeah,
but you know what I mean? As in for the ability for the species to continue existing.
Yeah, and so it could you actually from the evolutionary view, being that the person said it's a plague, religion's a plague, it could be the view that an organism comes collectively to the conclusion that killing off a giant amount of species, genociding an entire race or even a category of species, they find that advantageous to them. Like they could potentially argue that under evolution. They might not know the outcome, but they can certainly make the claim, and it might be true.
Well, it certainly made the Viltrumites a lot stronger.
Yeah, I mean it's like battle of the fittest. Might wins. Survival, takeover, terrestrial gain. I mean, religion, from an evolutionary view, let's say no religion's true. It seems like terrestrial gain by force, by will, by coercion, by any other means seems to be an advantage that would have developed over time from strict evolutionary terms, right?
Yeah, yeah.
First one coming in from, look at Craig's face, so self-satisfied over there. I'm just teasing
I'm
you.
always happy. I'm
I'm
also high.
only,
It's okay.
yeah, I'm firm with you because I know you could take it. Both you guys, you can handle it. This one coming in from, oh, by the way, folks, thanks so much. We also had someone just put in James Clark. Thank you for your support. We just jumped from 600 to 700 for the crowd
Ooh.
fund. So thank you so much. That seriously helps a lot. I think we're up to about 20% of the way. We appreciate that more than you know. And yes, folks,
And you
if
guys
you
watching on my channel, James gave me the opportunity to go to America, and it's happening again, and I really appreciate that. So if you guys have any spare meckles sitting around, and you want modern day debate to increase the quality of what they do, I would appreciate also if you could just chuck a few spare dollars at James's GoFundMe, because then means you get to see me in high definition. Wait, is that a good thing?
that means a lot. And it is. We want to see your big, beautiful face in high def. And but yeah, we do appreciate it, folks, because it is true. Yeah, back in DebateCon 4, if you look at the old debate between Matt Dillahunty and Andrew Wilson, that famous or infamous debate where the shit
He ran
hit the
away.
fan, and whew, that one was interesting. You can tell that are not only did the shit hit the fan in terms of the debate going sideways like 20 minutes into it where Matt walked out, but also the video and audio quality.
I'll
People were
read
like,
all
James,
your
come
super
on.
chats
Like, you're
after
going
this,
to take
you
this
guys.
seriously. You got
Promise.
to, like, so we do think that there's a very good purpose for these lenses. We no longer want to rent them. We don't own lenses, like, other than, like I've got my cameras or something, but these are like good ones, and I've got to tell you, we appreciate your support. I'm pumped that we just jumped another $100. Seriously, it means more than you know. And also, we're excited that that $100 is the 700 is like not truly reflective as Andrew Wilson. I didn't share the details before, but basically Andrew Wilson said, "Hey, I actually just he didn't have to do this, so it was very heroic for him to get up and do this. He said, "Hey, I just raised $500 for you." So want to give huge credit to Andrew. Like, that's super kind of him to help Modern Day Debate. Want to give a huge thank you. We've got a few more questions, but I do want to say Jim Bob and Fight the Flat Earth, aka Craig, they help Modern Day Debate just by being here. Like, them as debaters, they're good debaters. People enjoy listening to them. So we
Five
just
years,
appreciate the
James. Five
debaters.
5 years we've been doing this together.
Yeah, it has been a long ass time. And I also man, it's had its ups and downs. No, I'm
It's
kidding.
been
It's been
fun.
great. But both Jim Bob and Craig are linked in the description. Folks, what are you waiting for? Click on their links. Even if you disagree, I mean, if you agree, obviously, go have fun, make friends. If you disagree, then now is a great chance to go throw your poop at them over at their channel. Give them some engagement. A dislike helps just as much as a like. This next question coming in from Raw Dog says, why haven't we seen any monkeys evolve into humans over the many years of observation? If evolution is still a thing, we would still be able to see it happening today. Did it just stop?
No, no, it's still going on, but our lifespan is tiny. Monkeys never evolved into humans. That's not a thing. Monkeys and humans have a common ancestor. Monkeys evolved from the same thing that humans evolved from. We just developed in different environmental pressures, but we absolutely do still see evolution happening today. Let's look at, for instance, wolves becoming dogs. Yes, that is forced evolution, but still evolution.
Let's see. This one coming in from, oh yeah, we have a modern day debate is on Facebook. In case you guys didn't know, that's linked in the description. And Christopher Howard says, Craig, are you aware that programmed cell death occurs 99.9% of the time when genetic mutations are discovered? This creates a statistical impossibility when considering the number of mutations necessary for new species.
Yeah, that does not create a statistical impossibility. It just creates a statistical unlikelihood. Unlikelihood doesn't mean impossible. Even if cell death does occur 99.9% of the time with mutations, that still leaves a 0.1% of the time where it they don't die, and that mutation can exist and be then passed on to its offspring. All it needs is that 0.1% to have a beneficial adaptation for that particular organism in
Mhm.
that particular environment, for that then to be the one that survives with the offspring.
So do you at least concede that evolution, the way it's described, is mathematically unlikely?
uh, the odds of it happening the way that it does are mathematically unlikely. Um, but the as in, for the likelihood of the statistical likelihood of there being a genetic mutation that both doesn't cause cell death and is beneficial in the environmental pressures is, the odds of that are extremely low, but not zero. It is a non-zero probability, which means that it can happen. And because, Earth's been around for many billions of years, there's been plenty of time for that low probability to still happen.
You got it. And this one coming in from Mud says, this is to me Bob Ross evolution. Are the laws of logic and physics just happy little accidents as well? Just big mommy universe and daddy times baby?
Yeah, everything's an accident. The laws of physics that exist as they do, as far as we're aware, are an accident. The expansion of the universe allowed the gravitational constant and everything to be as it is by accident. Who knows? Everything is accidental. There's no evidence otherwise.
This one from 42 Attacks says, Craig, today marks the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Why haven't you Englishmen evolved? You're still kind of a pain. Love you though. Happy Easter.
Shush over there, or we'll take the colonies back.
This one from Jordan says, I think I got this one. Let me know. Just they said, just check the study. It was a change in mating behavior, had nothing to do with protein digestion. Full argument built on a
Incorrect.
lie. Did we do
The
that one?
molestus form of, yeah, he's talking about the mosquito. The molestus form of Culex pippins exhibits several adaptations that enable it to thrive in subterranean environments to feed on mammals, including humans. Key adaptations include a host preference shift. Unlike its surface dwelling counterpart, which primarily feeds on birds, molestus has developed a preference for mammalian hosts, adapting a protein that allowed it to digest red blood cells. Behavioral changes. The mosquitoes can also mate in confined spaces and remain active year round without the need for a winter dispause. These adaptations are believed to have evolved in response to the unique environment of underground habitats where birds are scarce and mammals are the primary available hosts. So if he'd actually read the paper, he would see that there was more than one reason for the evolution. There was in fact multiple adaptations, including the ability to digest blood cells from mammals instead of just birds.
This one, folks, I forgot to tell you. Where do we say? Right now we are at $700. Uh, if we get to $1,000 before the end of this debate, I will, uh, I will take off my hoodie, show you the Subway tattoo. It's my
Gosh,
favorite tattoo. It's my only tattoo.
my tattoo
Some,
beats yours.
why? But it's not Subway.
No, it's Star Trek.
Okay, well, nobody's perfect. But I will show off my tattoo if I don't know if show off is the right word. Embarrass myself with my logo on my back. If we get to $1,000, um, I appreciate it. So thank you so much. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. That is, I will admit, that's a very well done Star Trek
It's not
tattoo.
finished yet. I've got a bunch being added to it. Earth's going here. A lot of colors going in it. This is going to be bright gold. All the lights and stuff on the ship. The nacelle is going to be on because it's at warp.
And
And
Bob,
a
any
bunch of
tattoos?
nebula and stuff.
Okay.
Any
But
no tattoos? Any
I have
tattoos?
one very regrettable tattoo. I got a tattoo of my daughter's initials, which is M and J on my middle finger, and the M sort of dissolved, and now it looks like an H. So I have an HJ on my hand.
oh no, can you not get it like
Wow.
touched up?
No, you can't touch up the finger because it just bleeds. Because your fingers are
Oh,
always moving. So I just have to just deal with the funny accident that I have HJ on my arm, on my hand.
I mean, it's a story. It's
Yeah.
funny. I mean, you know what it means. That's the thing. You got
Yeah,
it
yeah,
because it means
yes.
something to you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
If there's a
Plus,
good
if
and
someone says,
noble,
"What's that?" you get to tell a funny story.
That's true.
if what more noble purpose could there be to get it, for your kids? Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I like
Well, I've
that.
got my family's on this side. I've got my wife, my son, and my daughter on here, along with my family's clan tag.
That's rad. And this one coming in from Let's Talk God says, question for Craig, is sex an evolutionary accident? I don't know if they mean like relations type sex or if they mean
Well,
uh
right. Sex
sexes.
is how humans propagate, and that the way that they do that is a result of evolution, which is an accident. So, I mean, the short answer is yes. Sex is an accident. Is it an accident when I have sex with my wife? I hope not. I surely hope she's aware it's happening.
This one coming in from your question from No Way As Way 1988 says, why don't prey animals evolve to willingly be consumed?
Why don't prey animals evolve to willingly be consumed? Because that would
Oh,
be,
that's interesting. Hmm.
I mean, there's no genetic mutation that would cause, plus that wouldn't be beneficial. Why would willingly being consumed be a beneficial adaptation? Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. This one coming in from Tenublet says Craig believes a pro-organism evolved a more complicated penile nub and somehow came across another proto-organism with a vaginal opening by mere chance when then reproduction worked just fine. Bruh.
wow. Please don't light any matches because you must be around a bunch of strawmen. No, no one said that. Species evolve, as a species, and the mating process is part of that adaptation. Good lord, man. You're like the literal person that thinks that a fish had sex with a monkey and turned into a bird or something.
You got it. And I can't believe it's already like 4:26. I'm in Pacific time, so crazy. This time has flown by. Austin Graham says, James, do you say wow like Owen Wilson on purpose, or did you accidentally evolve that way? Ha ha ha. That's
Wow.
funny. This one
You
from
do realize you do that, right?
it wasn't because of Owen Wilson, it's because there's a guy named Fred Herbert that I heard say it like that. Um,
Wow. I literally
Basil
see his face when you say it. I'm like, Stop it."
Basil Problem says, are you a crazy Christian? So modern day debate is a neutral platform, but yes, you could consider me crazy and a Christian. Crazy Christian with
So you're
a
not just a
hyphen.
Christian; you are specifically a crazy Christian.
Pretty kooky. I've got some beliefs and ideas that are like both from yeah, I'm like, anything goes. Slithery says, look into the anthropic principle. If the laws of physics weren't what we observe, then we wouldn't be here to ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. If the laws of physics were different, then who knows?
I think this might, that maybe this has to do with like the idea of like, why do the laws of physics seem to be such that they allow for like they're perfectly they appear to be designed for life. And I think he's saying, well, yeah, like the anthropic principle says that if the laws of physics weren't what we observe, then we wouldn't be here to even ask the question. In other words,
Yeah,
like if they weren't apparently designed for humans. The only thing is, I want to give you pushback on this, Craig, unless Jim, Bob, if you have something, is that like, this is a little bit the anthropic principle. I don't want to. How about this? What would you say to this, Craig, if someone else sent a super chat that said, but isn't that kind of like saying, like, let's say I said, like, listen, I survived a plane crash. The stars just seem to align in terms of like all the things that had to be in place to protect me during the plane crash. Like, everybody else died, and it was from like, it's a plane crash. So it's the plane's coming down from
yeah.
like, I don't know, 30,000 feet. And then, you know, you asked me, James, how could this have happened? Like, why did it appear as if there was design? And imagine my answer was, well, if if I would not have survived, like if it wasn't the case that all those things happened in just the right way, I wouldn't be here to tell the story. Don't you
Or
think that'd
even
be a
ask the
little,
question,
huh?
or even there to ask the question of how
Right.
it happened.
But don't you see how it's kind of like not particularly an answer of like, it doesn't feel like it's answering the question per se. Because if I, like the question is like, well, wow, like how did you survive? Like me saying like, well, if I didn't, I wouldn't be here to talk to you right now. It's like, well, but that doesn't explain how you survived, right? Like that doesn't explain how all these things were like perfectly aligned
Yeah,
so you survived.
I mean, if you survive a plane crash, that's the outlier, right? Most people don't survive plane crashes. So you were in that plane crash where you survived, but that's not the normal case. The fact that you survived the plane crash and you're there then to be able to talk about it and stuff is an accident in itself.
We'll move on to the next one, unless I don't want to take your spot in talking to
No,
Craig,
no, I'm
Jim
cool.
Bob.
If honestly, I like it's an interesting conversation.
The only thing I would add to that is I heard Craig say before that the laws of physics came about from an accident, but that would assume there was a previous law of physics, a type of physics that could produce the process that produces the laws of physics by accident. And then that set of laws would need to be accidental and then would need
Yeah,
something
no,
before it and so on.
no, you're absolutely right. We don't know how things started, right? We can mathematically go back to the point of the Big Bang, but we don't know what caused the Big Bang to then set in motion the laws of physics as we know them, right? But we know that if certain conditions were very different during the Big Bang, then the laws of physics could be completely different now. The gravitational constant was different. If the universe expanded at a different rate, things could have been very different. But the fact that for whatever reason, if the Big Bang did happen, the conditions that arrived allowed the laws of physics to exist as they do. We don't know why. Could it have been a design beforehand? There's no way to answer that. But as far as we can tell, it's just an accident from the way the expansion happened.
Juicy. We'll jump into the next one. And we do appreciate your question. This one coming in from Quick Lee says God's creation must have a blueprint or recipe, and perhaps that is evolution/science. Perhaps we ate on the same page. I think they meant perhaps we are on the same page.
Yeah. I completely agree with that, right? I am an atheist, but there's no way I could ever prove that God doesn't exist or that you didn't create the universe, whatever. It's just that's something that's completely outside of science. But who's to say that if there is a God, he didn't set in motion the laws that evolution follows? It's very clear from the evidence, at least it appears to be clear from the evidence that evolution is what happens. But I'm in no position to say that wasn't then designed before the universe to be how it happened.
I would
Jim Bob, what do you
I would
think?
just add that the ambiguity of God ends up being the problem here. Like you have to be really specific when you say like I believe in evolution and I believe in God, and you have to go like who? Like a Christian approach. I've debated Redeem Zoomer on this matter. That from a Christian perspective, if you just grant us that Christ is risen. That Christ took on humanity, human nature, but human nature is always evolving. There is no universal nature that Christ took on because the universal natures don't exist. And so, from that view, a Christian couldn't say we are tasked at healing our nature if there's no such thing as a human nature, right? And it also follows that
Yeah.
if evolution kept continuing and we maintained our Christian duties, in my perspective, participating in the sacraments, let's say divine liturgy could very well be composed and conducted by a bunch of beasts that look like platypuses, right? So if that's the case, that you just need some time for that to happen. Now, if someone says God is like the creator of all things, but there's no real task or ontology for our being, or who we are and what we are, and you hold a view that evolution melds everything together, as Craig has kind of pointed to today, that everything's everything, there really are no distinct categories of animals and beings, then the question of like, well, what are we doing here if that God set into motion this giant machine, biological machine? How could you have moral positions from this God if we're all just one thing? That would mean that like everything we do is not only accidentally produced, but it's actually determined by strict physical laws. That is to say, if someone, the terrible shootings that occur, those are just determined outcomes of biology through the evolutionary view. So, like, who is this God, by the way? Who is the God? I ask further questions. That's why it's fun to do debates against other theists, actually more fun than debating an atheist.
Take that, Craig. Listen, this one coming in from, thanks so much. We just jumped another $100 in the fundraiser for these lenses. Thank you so much.
Nice.
I appreciate it more than you know. And I got to tell you, I'm guaranteeing it, it's a very financially clever strategy for us, just because, like I said, if we have to do, hold on, my sister, I'm so sorry. Can I call you? I didn't realize I clicked answer. I'll call you right back in like 4 hours. Is that okay?
I'll call you right back in 4 hours.
Oh, thank you. Love you too. And happy Easter too.
Hey, Jim Bob, that
Sorry.
blue bar you've got behind you, what one is that?
Oh, it's wait, floor. I'll actually send you the link, Craig. It's
Yeah, because I'm wanting some of that for
I
in
think it's
here.
a
I like it.
Nuvo. I'll send you the link.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very affordable too.
But yeah, basically my sister says happy Easter. I love my sister. But yeah, I do want to say, yeah, we are excited. So thank you so much for the last person. Anonymous donated $100. In fact, we have two anonymous donors of $100. Thank you so much for that support. That means more than you know. We're at 23% of the way. So that is like, we're pretty close to being able to get one lens in full. And like I said, cool thing is you usually have to pay like over $100 just to rent the lens for a day, if I remember right. You can just
Oof.
buy it for 900. If you use it 9 days,
You've got your money
you've
back.
already paid for it. And that's not including Baycon 5. We had to pay for insurance because the company's like, hey, you're renting like $19,000 worth of, because not only did we rent the lenses, but the actual camera bodies. It was it was freaking expensive. So this is a smart strategy because I'm telling you, we're in this for
Stop
the long
whining.
run. I just bought the modernddaydebate.com domain for the next 10 years. Finally got it because one of
Oof.
those damn squatters had it, and I waited him out, and I waited for the day it expired, and I snagged it. The other thing is, uh, we need $200 more. If we get $200 more, I will show you the subway tattoo. Believe me, you won't regret it in the sense that it will keep you awake for many nights. Christopher Howard says, second comment, I say that evolution is statistically impossible because the creature with the mutation would not survive long enough to find a mate with the same quote unquote accidental mutation with which it could reproduce. I think this is
I mean,
maybe,
yeah, a
go ahead.
mutation doesn't automatically mean it straight away couldn't reproduce with someone without the mutation. It's only over several generations of that happening that they become very different. A mutation, straight away, there's no reason, lions and tigers can still mate and produce offspring, even though they're genetically quite different. It has to be genetically very, very different for for mating to not be possible. Although I think once a lion and a tiger has a child, that child can't then produce any offspring.
Hmm. This one from 1776 says, "This is God's terrarium. We're all just living in it." Interesting.
Puny God.
Thanks for your super chat. This one coming in from No Way As Way 1988 says, "Craig, are the laws of logic accidentally consistent?"
Yes, everything is an accident. The laws of logic exist because of the universe existing the way it does, and as far as I can tell, that's an accident.
This
How
one
would you
from
hold on? How would you know it's not an accident? Because being that we established that your own reasoning is accidental, how would you know it's not an accident? If you said everything's an accident, how would you know it's
Right.
not? Do you think?
Right. That goes back to the question of, do I know what started the universe, right? If if I knew there was a being that started the universe, that set every law of logic, law of physics,
Mm.
law of, everything in motion, then I guess it wouldn't be accidental. But unless that is the only way that I would assume that things are not accidental, is if I saw the thing that designed it all. But as I don't personally believe in a god, then I have to hold
Yeah,
the intellectually honest position of that it's an
yeah, but
accident.
you do believe in something that's in categorically at least in the same category as God. You believe truth exists, right?
Yeah, I would not say that truth and God are the same though, because God has, at least within your own paradigm, God has shown that he can lie.
Well, no, I'm saying that for something to be true, if truth exists, then there's an absolute standard ontologically for truth. But under your view, if everything's accidental, the truth as it exists ontologically, how does the truth exist if it's accidental?
Well, it can be accidentally true. Being true and being accidental aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, but how? In what way does truth exist from your view, being that it's accidental? In what way does it exist?
Uh, you can show that A leads to B with logic and maths. I can prove mathematically that one add one equals two and show that that's absolutely 100% true.
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally.
Okay.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Basil Problem says, "Craig, are you comfortable with being a performer on a Christian channel that, based on a menu of debate topics, likely believes women's rights should be limited?"
Modern Day Debate is a neutral debate platform on science, politics, and religion. Although James himself is a Christian and the majority of the audience appear to be Christian, the platform itself is not a Christian platform. I the specific things that James believes or that the audience believe does not change the fact that this is and always has been a neutral platform.
This guy's weird. This is the one that asked you, Craig, if you think it's if you do you why do you think you're qualified to participate in a debate on evolution, Craig? They might be a stiffly stifferson. I don't know.
Well,
Stiffy
Maybe they're
Stifferson.
you
one of
could
those
ask that. You
rigid
should
types.
ask that guy why does he think he's qualified to ask Craig if why he thinks he's qualified, and we should just keep going. Just go
Yeah.
down the line.
Infinite regress. This one from Let's Talk God says, "Question for Craig. If sex is an accident, therefore, if I cheat on my wife, in all possible cases, it's an accident, correct?"
uh, yeah, everything's an accident, but you have the ability to choose. Everything's an accident in the sense of you exist because of an accident, but because of these accidents, you have been given the ability to choose what you do. That ability itself is an accident. So what you choose to do is up to you. If you choose to use those accidents that have given you a conscience and a mind and your own thoughts, if you choose to use that to cheat on your wife, that's a you problem. I've been married for 18 years. I've never accidentally put my penis in somebody else.
That's good news. And this is also good news. Thanks for your question. This coming in from, let me just see if I can get this to load here. Oh, other good news. We just hit We jumped from 800 to 900. So thank you so much, folks.
Woo!
Seriously, we're excited about these lenses. We plan on using them all the time. I want to give you a quick. I'll wait until. Oh, holy smokes! I actually got to let you guys. We have to wrap up pretty quick here. So I actually have to let our guests go because we are going to start the last debate in just 18 minutes. So let me just skim for any last questions. Then I want to let these guys go and I'll give you updates about stuff. But yeah, if we hit 1,000, I promise I will show you the subway tattoo. Very excited
Only a
about it.
hundred to go, guys.
And so yes, I don't know why you'd want to see it, but but we appreciate your support. I think that is it for questions. I'm going to do a quick skim and want to say check out Craig's and Made by Jim Bob's links in the description box. What are you waiting for, folks? Right now, check them out. But yeah, thank you, Craig, and Made by Jim Bob for being here. It's been a true pleasure to host you guys.
Absolute pleasure as
You're welcome.
always, Jim Bob. Thank you for the very
Thank you.
passionate and enthusiastic debate.
You
It's
as
always
well.
fun.
You as well.
Thanks, guys. I will let you go. And what I'm going to do, in this case, it's kind of different where it's just booting you from the old Zoom call because I'm going to
See
keep
you
the
later.
same one. Take care. Have a good one. And let's see here. Just fixing.
Well, there you have it, folks. There it be. We be do that. That pretty much went exactly how I thought it was going to go. And I'm not just saying that I would win, which I did. That the direction of where he would take, well, let's face it, I pushed him in the direction. That's my strategy. That's what I'm good at. Keeping people in corners and riling around and freaking out. That's my specialty. So, I'm glad he allowed himself to go into the philosophical, because the combination of nominalism and accidentalism is so insane. And Craig just doesn't understand it because he hasn't developed any sort of philosophy. He's used to debating flat earthers and things like this. But once you get into that, you realize how absurd it is to even reason or debate if you think everything, including your own thinking, is accidental. But further, he didn't realize that once I established that a thing called a species turning into another species is the basis of the evolutionary narrative, and admitting that under the evolutionary narrative, there's no such thing as a single species or a group of species or a population of species, because it's ever changing. You heard it from him. He said, everything is everything. That's why evolution is such a joke. It's basically Hinduism. It's a religion about this ever-changing flux of reality and animals and all of these things. And when you guys debate, people I don't advocate debating your family or anything, but when you start to look at this stuff, and you ask these simple questions like, okay, is a cat downstream from something that's not a cat? He says yeah. He says yes. You say, okay, well, if you look into the fossils and there's something that a cat comes from, but it doesn't look like a cat, it's totally dissimilar. How would you determine it comes from that? That was crazy, dude. Abby Wong coming in with a 20. I'll read all the super chats, you guys. Sending help to reach your goal. Thank you so much, Abby. Thanks for doing debates. I enjoy them. I appreciate your donation. A big, warm, get some likes on this Jason Cassell. Already 19. Let's get that up. Show Jason Cassell some love for showing me some love. Assuming the laws of logic are accidental implies they could be otherwise, but denying them, claiming A cannot be A in the same sense, presupposing their validity to make a coherent denial. Any attempt to argue against them relies on them showing their necessity. Yeah, unfortunately, Jason, that's way out of Craig's philosophical wheelhouse. I saw that in real time. Some might say, dude, you should have just chopped him at that point. I kind of left it hanging, honestly. I just left it. I was like, oh my gosh. The dude just reduced his own reasoning, his own argument for evolution. His own argument for evolution is accidental. Holy moleskin. Okay, let's go through these. Abby, I got that. Markuth, may I request a... yeah, let's get 2 ahs, right? Let's get 2. Let's get 3. Here we go. We got 1, 2, 3. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar! You guys earned it. That's right, Alex. That's right, Alex. Alter Void, $5. If everything is an accident, then it's that really on purpose that's an accident. Yeah, is there any purpose to the accident, right? Let's Talk God, $5. If sex is an accident, therefore, if I cheat on my wife, in all possible cases, it's an accident. Yeah, Let's Talk God. That was a great question. I appreciate you sending it on my side, even if it wasn't read on his side. I'm glad you sent it in on his side as well. He doesn't understand from that view, nobody can do anything wrong. Your Honor, it was an accident. And Your Honor, the judge says, yeah, I'm accidentally disagreeing with you. And then, the sentence comes and I accidentally sentence you this much time. It's like Muslim. It's like, basically, why don't you be a Muslim? Let me see. Super chat, one of last 2 indeed. Thank you so much for that super chat. Another one for Alter Void So Gay. He says, new member, someone got a work visa, Tina L. Nice job with a work visa. Adolf, $5. Thanks for everything you do, Jim Bob. Jim Bob and the mods. Shout out to my mods. This channel has really brought me some hope. God bless. Happy Easter to all. Yeah, happy Easter to you. Hope some of you in the chat will be making it to Midnight Liturgy if you are Orthodox, Inquiring, or Catechumen. Or if you're a guest, go check it out, please. Go ahead so we can talk about it. $10, Alter Void. Can we just force evolution because it's so true? Can we start forcing people to not eat for generations? I'm sure we will evolve to not need food. It's weird you say that, Alter Void, because there are some people who take this critical, I forget what they call it, it's basically like a critical aggravation where they're prodding evolution to happen. And there are some fancy pants people who hold this view that they think that, well, if evolution is true and everything's a reaction to stimuli, can't we just start prodding at humanity and see if it reacts? I wouldn't be surprised if the whole jibby-jabby thing, people think, well, this is about ending people and population control. I mean, what if it's not? What if it's all of these types who are obsessed with evolution? What if it's their way of being like, well, maybe we can prod an ubermensch population? What if we just have to wait a couple of years for the reaction to stimuli? Let's see what happens. And you're like, will you take it? And they're like, no, no thanks. $2 from Jake Mark Folia. Thank you so much. Justin Henley, $5. That's funny. Craig didn't acknowledge people are a resource too. JB, more people equal more smart people equals faster development, solutions to resource problems. Yeah. Well, it was funny when the one guy was like, hey, you guys are a plague. And I'm like, well, it's weird that the plague is reproducing better than you. Huh? Eh? Vagine? What do you think?
Here's an oldie, but a goodie. Chemicals chemically chemical, while other chemicals chemical, they're chemicals.
That's right.
It's chemical.
From stuff. That's right. Stuff comes from stuff. Thank you, Vagine, for remembering. Have a blessed Pascha, Austin. Austin Datilio, huh? Thank you, Austin. Christ is risen. Thanks, Austin. What else we got here? Tyler G. What's up, Tyler G? $10 says nothing. Tyler G, you're the one with the G handlebar mustache, right? $5 from The Cut. Happy and safe Easter to you and your family, brother. Best to Vagine as well. Yeah, shout out to Vagine. She's probably shitting on a brick right now. You know what I mean? Probably just popping a squat in the middle of the street. Nobody even questions it. 99 cents from Edoff. Thank you. $10 from Alter Void. I'm glad Evolution has an Excel sheet to track resources. Yeah, that makes sense to start deleting off your species. Yeah. $2 from Justin Henley. Regis doesn't host Jeopardy. Alex, fail Craig. Yeah. I don't see the emojis on this back end. Justin Henley, Rachel, do you want to fight him? Yeah, I was wondering if Rachel was going to start a fight. Thanks. $10 from Tenublet. Craig believes a proto-organism evolved a more complicated penile nub and somehow came across another proto-organism with a vaginal slit, but mere chance, totally accidental, and they accidentally mashed them together. When then reproduction worked just fine. I know. I know, it's wild. Oops, accident. Yep, accidental bagels. Accidental bagels.
Bagel.
I accidentally heard you. Worst day ever. Yeah. 361. Bartender, could you mix a London Mosquito Underground? Make it a single. My 1/4 liver can only take so much. I accidentally gave you money, Smalls says for $5. Thank you so much. $2, Justin Henley. Canadian Prattle. That's funny. $9.99 from DL. Can you run an audio filter over your stream that changes the British accent into a regular person's accent? I think he's, what is he, Scottish or New Zealand? What is he? $2 from Justin says, dude, JB accidents? Bro, like what? Seriously. The accidental debate. I mean, it looked like an accident. Felt like an accident. His mosquito study is a lie. It was a change in mating behavior, has noticed nothing to do with spontaneous digestion adaptations. Yeah, this is why it's good to know about these things, which I don't often. I usually look them up on the spot. It takes a little time to dive in and figure out the discrepancy between what the interlocutor is assuming and what the study actually says. And it always turns out to be the case that every time with any of these things, there's never a case where the indication is that the organism ends up turning into a different thing. You notice how when he used the mosquito thing anyway, right, Jordan? I asked, is it still a mosquito? And he was like, no. And I was like, can I call it another animal like a cow? I mean, he's basically said yes. It's like, what is this thing? It's not a mosquito. Well, you can't have both. You can't have you can't have a view that mosquitoes exist and turn into non-mosquitoes if you also reject that there's such a thing as mosquitoes exist because they're always in flux. Q-Tard says for $10, dude, I can't stop laughing at the B12 injection snake. It's my favorite. You're dead. Yeah. It's one of my favorite visuals. The B12 snake is so funny. It's really good rhetoric, but it's also like, it actually points to something. If all of it's accidental, how do we not have accidental snakes with really awesome things? You know, extra oxygen it gives us and stuff. Just accidentally, whoop. LMFO, I accidentally wanted to live. Yeah, it was accident. Yep, Marcus. $2 from Dustin. Accidents can be tested with reliability. That's wild, dude. That was the thing he didn't get. I was like, wait a second, you're using science and all the empiricism to test accidental, things are accidental. Oh, man. Jordan says for $5, Jimothy is 2 for 2 back-to-back, made two opponents hide behind ambiguity and completely contort their own positions. Yeah, I'm learning. I'm evolving. $5 from Jordan. You already got that. Super chat from Mud. Thanks, Mud. Bob Ross Evolution would be a sick band name. Their first album would be a bunch of happy little accidents. First song is Believe in Miracles. That's correct. You know what's weird at the end? Someone asked a question about likelihood, and he admitted that everything he's pointing to at the particular is unlikely. If you extrapolate it out, he admitted, yeah, evolution as it happens today is unlikely. So he's asking us to believe in unlikely things. It's weird. Craig's hairline was like, this hair is just junk DNA. The whole junk thing, I didn't want to do a red herring, but the junk DNA, people don't even use the term anymore. So Pokemon, yeah. So pretty much Pokemon, actually. They always make fun of us, the people who deny evolution, and they're like, oh, so Pokemon? It's not like that. And you're like, what is it? It's Pokemon. It's just longer. Under Craig's view from Contemporary Compendium for $5, thank you so much. Black folks can scientifically be classified as not as human, as be purchased as property. Yeah, it could be the case. Could be the case. In fact, if there was some sort of group of people that had some sort of mutation where they couldn't actually reproduce with the current population, that happens at the particular. But let's say it happens at the group level. Craig would have to say they're not human. Toilet Bowl Earth, thank you so much for the $5. Everything is everything. I am now Jay Dyer. Unmute, bro. Unmute, bro. Marcus Antonio, $5. My cat fell into the tub. Now has gills. $5 from Contemporary Compendium. I have changed our current arrangement. I pray I don't change it further. Evolution. Yeah, I accidentally signed an agreement. Total accident. Can I call thing X Z? Evolution, folks. That's right. The mosquito's not a mosquito. You can call it anything you want. Craig's direct ancestors were likely apes $2 from Taint Nuffin. $2.54 from Well Emmanuel. If it looks like a llama and it fossils like a llama, perhaps a camel. Iken has a PhD now. Jay Dyer routinely gets 4th place in Mario Party. Does he play Mario Party? 20 gifted memberships from Abject Fool. Thank you so much for that, and welcome new visa holders, work visa. So, I hope you stay. I hope you work your visa, and I hope you graduate to a real citizen of Jordanlandia. I'm actually gonna up the perks on citizenship here. I'm gonna up the perks. I'm gonna start being basically the welfare state. I'm going to incentivize immigration out there in internet space, in the panelverse, and I'm going to incentivize work visas and immigrants, and I'm going to start treating the citizens. $5 from Naj. I can fix her. That's funny. I'm giving this debate 2 nubs way up. Yeah, put those nubs up. Unearther subbed. Thank you so much. Mud, another $5. Hello, everyone. I just got in. Using primordial ooze baby is losing horribly and acting like a big, bad, predetermined son of a monkey fish. Yeah. Asked for a super chat and answered. Thank you, Well Emmanuel. Another sub, TMS. Thank you so much. $20 from Nicholas Clinton. WJB, God bless Posca. Thank you. God bless you. Another work visa comes in. Another couple come in. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rob. That's funny. Oh, that's one day ago. I'm all caught up except for a couple that may have that I heard come in. Navigator says for $1.44. Strange number. Evolution is unfalsifiable. You showed it. That's true. The whole thing. Happy Easter, Jim Bob and family. Thank you, CJ Osafi, for 20 big buckaroos. $4.99 from No Way As Way. Thank you. These guys think that they can see back into the Big Bang, but they can't point to a missing link, and they can't tell us what future evolution will look like. It's a little bit bizarre, isn't it? $63.88. Amazing. How would you consent even work, even if every arrangement is an accident? Yeah, also Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen. Yeah, weird, dude. I accidentally signed a work. Like, what? What in the hell? A massive $100 from Sincere Hypocrite. Let's get a bunch of likes on that, you guys. How would oh, that's the one I read. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Oh, I see. They give me, wow. Damn, they take a lot. That is brutal. That's brutal. I don't want to minimize it. It wasn't 63. For everyone I just read, and it was more than what you super chatted, I apologize. I'm in the back end, and they're reporting after YouTube. I don't want to take away your the amount of money you're sending. Thank you for the $100 and everyone who donated whatever the original number was. I apologize for reading the back end number because that's not what it was. So really appreciate that. I think that's it for that. Really appreciate that. 3 out of 5. Well, we got 2 more. We got 2 more to hit the secondary goal. Anyone else going to church tonight? Midnight? I'm pretty excited. Pretty pumped. I'm going to stay. I can't wait to see the food. 100 Australian dollars. Got it. Yeah. You can send Bob Chats too. BobChats.com. Vagine, our in-house Indian that I stole from AT&T. She figured out she should abandon AT&T and work for me. So she's been with us ever since. 41% it's at? Oh, man. Sick people. These people are sick. Chronux says, you're too broke. No worries. You know what? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Bagel. It's unreal. The Unreal Bagels. Unbelievable, man.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Our man's at 8 p.m. We've got a lot of older folks. That makes sense. You don't want them, falling asleep, peeing themselves. Thank you so much, Zorch. Appreciate that. Truly is risen. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know if you guys got this, for those of you who do attend church, specifically Divine Liturgy. There was in the process of attending, there's a lot of baggage with going to church. Like it feels like this, it is an obligation, but you're like, there's days where you're like, oh, do I have to, kind of thing. It's very petulant. I don't know when it happened, but there is this moment. I don't know if you guys can relate to this. There's a moment where you crave it and you want to go. You actually are excited. Like, it fundamentally changes. I don't know when it happened for me. I can't pinpoint it. The thing that's mostly related to is, has anyone ever done a type of fast where you drink a ton of water? Like way more water than you're used to? And at first you're like fighting it. It doesn't seem right. It's like, doesn't even feel like natural to you. And you're just like forcing it, but you do it. There's this weird transition. Who's ever done this? I've done it twice, where you suddenly you just want it. You just want the water. That Brad says, I probably need to go after a week of trolling. You should. Yeah, you should go. Everyone head out. Even people who aren't. It might as well be the one time you should visit a liturgy. One shot, $5. I accidentally fat nubbed my vote and clicked on Craig. Here's 5 nubs for my accidental betrayal. That's funny. Well, Craig's aside from spurging out so much, and I combat spurg him, by the way. If they start spurging, I'll use my spurg. I don't care. We'll stay in spurgatory forever. I don't care. I'll make the moderator work. Nice job, Jim Bob. PG says for $5. Craig seems to just love his own voice. Here's to a potential jam session stream with you and Andrew playing some of your favorite songs. That would be fun. I know Andrew's capable of playing some basic chords, but I would never expect anything more from someone who drinks such piss beer. You know what I mean? Someone who drinks Miller Lite, there's no way they know more chords than G, D, C. Maybe A minor. Maybe. Just some Easter love. Thank you, Isaac Hayes. Really appreciate that. Spurgatory. I should make that. I should make some sort of overlay. Spurgatory. And it's all like over the top. 2 more to reach the goal over here. And then I think everyone should be on their way. Is there anyone else? That's just 2 more 20s, folks. 2 more 20s. Oh, it ended. Never mind. Sorry. My bad. He's a better guitarist. Yeah, he's definitely joking. You know, I'm hipster. If you're a hipster, you like dedicate yourself to being good at something, you know, because inside you don't think you're cool enough. So you're like, oh, I'll get good at that then. I'll get good at that. No, I understand he said that. Yeah. That's his comedy. That's when he's being funny. You know. Taint Nuffum $9.99. You're not supposed to debate children, Jim Bob. You need to entertain their silly beliefs. Also, can I have this money back? I'm poor. Yeah, you can. Oh shit. Oh man. Wow. That was interesting. Am I back? That was weird. Christ is risen. Indeed, Bill Hicks. He has. That was weird. Am I back? Yes or no? Because I just got totally shut down temporarily. So it's gone. Everything was gone. We back? No? You never left? Oh, it's just on my side. Okay. Alrighty. All right. Who's up and running here? Who do we got? Who is it we got? Another $13.99 from Canada. Eugene Koonin, a world expert in evolutionary biology, states in his book, The Probabilistic Resource of Our Universe Make Evolution Virtually Impossible, and appeals to the multiverse damning admission. That's interesting. That the next phase, look at it this way. We need more time. We need more time. With enough time, we need more time. Well, it's possible, even if it's 1%. More time, more time, more time. Guess what? What's the navigator? I'm glad that that person exists. I'm going to check him out. Eugene Koonin. I can have him on the stream if he's not dead. What's next? Well, more space, more dimensions. Dimensions. That makes total sense. Eugene is like, yeah, dude, we don't got enough time. You don't have enough universes. We don't have enough universes. With enough universes, that's funny. With enough time. No, with enough universes. Wild. Bill Hicks, $5. Christos Voskrese. Christos Aneste. Christo Risorto. Christo Ha Resienetado. Christos Har... Oh, that one's Latvian, isn't it? Christos Smartiftusta. Heliustosia Fulue. Well, I'm sorry if I completely obliterated, but I tried. I gave it my best. Jim doesn't even understand dimensions. I don't. And you shouldn't. If you think you start understanding dimensions, guys, is it an accident? Dimensions, D-E-M, demonitions, Wake up, dude. I try. Every time I come over for Thanksgiving, I try to wake you guys up. You're my family. I love you. You don't open my emails. You don't check out the PDF files I send you. You don't take out the charts. I send you all the information. I send you all the accounts. I hear nothing back from you. I can't make your eyelids go up. Only you can. I'm leaving. It's like an intervention, the truther intervention. Intervention usually is a group of people with one person, but the truther intervention is the truther with many people. They just reverse it. Do you even care? Enzo for $20. Thank you so much. First Midnight Divine Liturgy for me. You're a legend, Jim Bob. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I can't wait for you to experience it and celebrate it. It really is beautiful. I love the reverse intervention. Seems like something SNL would have done like many years ago when it was funny. That's a convention. That's funny. Convention, intervention, ventilator, vent. Vigo, did you catch the Flat Earth? I don't watch it anymore. I don't watch the debates anymore of Flat Earth. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't get myself. I can't. I can't do it. All right. Let's check a look at who's out there in the world. Anybody? Does anybody even know who's out there? Somewhere out there beneath the pale moonlight, someone's thinking of me. Shut up, you rat. Who wants rats in a city anyway? What is wrong with that movie? Fievel? Get out of here, Fievel. No one wants you here. No one even wants you, dude. Whatever, dude.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
What? Whatever, dude. You have no place to talk. You literally chainsaw people in your apartment. Freak. You freak. Freak show. Nobody. Well, maybe that's the right thing. Maybe tonight is nobody. You go nowhere. You go to your homes. You go to your friends and family. That's the answer. That's where I'm sending you. Okay? MST 3000 is live. What's MST? What is that? MST. Mike, what is that, Mike? You saw that in the theater as a kid? I think I did too. I also saw, like, what is it, Baby? Remember Baby? It was like the dinosaur movie. You don't want to go home there? That's funny. Yeah. Oh, he's a mouse. Thank you for the distinction. Now it makes more sense. Mice are cute. Rats are filth. Mice are pets. Rats are filth. I mean, mice are friends. Rats are pests. I see what's happening here. All right. Let's see what I wish Jordan Peterson live streamed. You know how great it would be? You know how great it would be if he just was like, Ben Shapiro was like, no, yeah, absolutely not. Everything is pre-written, pre-performed, and edited. That is the way we do it here at the Daily Wire. You are an absolute liability. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be mean, Jordan. But we give you a platform where you're able to rant for several hours unchecked. That is a liability. If you want to do that, we can sever. We can cut ties right now. No hard feelings. You can go out and do that. I would be like, do it, dude. Can you imagine just showing up over at Jordan Peterson's YouTube and it's just him in a chair for like 15 hours? That's actually what everyone wants. They're trying to control him, put him in a suit. He doesn't need to be in a suit. He needs to be in a robe. Totally misused. He's not supposed to be all dapper, prancing around, doing the TED Talk strut. The TED Talk strut. He's supposed to be in a gross leathery chair with the grommets on it, and it's like this weird room with a lot of art behind it, and he's kind of just picking up objects he got from around the world and kind of be like, well, this is something I remember this. It's a messy room, totally a messy room. A disaster. Cold coffee. Like the dude, kind of, like the dude. I mean, it would be massive, huge, funny, influential. But they're like, no, we're going to wrap him up in a bow. He's going to be our little Shabbos guy. Get in your suit. Not only that, but we're going to give you clown suits. It's going to be a mockery. It's going to be an absolutely disaster. You're going to be humiliated. Okay. Whatever you say, Baco. Whatever. Can you say chocolatey Candace Owens in Ben's? Yeah, our little chocolatey Candy Owens. She really betrayed us. I mean, she was running game over here at Daily Wire for a long time. I mean, her numbers were up. And the moment she starts waking up her eyes, and opening those alien-looking eyes, our chocolatey little pudding popsicle started to melt. It was like you know what I felt like? It was like when the summer ends. When you're all excited with your friends, for those of you who have friends in the summertime, where you're playing around and then suddenly there's a moment where soccer season is starting. And the cold is coming. And the fall is coming. And the darkness. That's what it felt like when Candy left me. A total betrayal. A total betrayal. And I cannot even begin to elucidate you all on the heartache that caused me. It wasn't just a financial a disaster. It hurt my little heart. It hurt my little tummy. And I'd be lying to say I didn't think. I have the thoughts, the terrible thoughts of doing things to her in return. I admit, everyone here at the Daily Wire knows that I am vindictive. I have problems with vengeance. But I would be absolutely lying to say it didn't come across my mind to tie her up to a truck and run her through the town of Austin. I would never do it. I thought it, though. I did think it. But I wish her well. But, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do totally wish her well. I mean, it didn't work out. And that is the way the world works, folks. And people ask me, how do I deal with my haters? And I just don't acknowledge them. You know what I mean? Someone sent me a channel. What is it called? It's like Fuentes. This guy Fuentes. Like, he has a channel or something like this. It's like, I think it's called Abby. I think it's called Abby Milker Nation. Something like that. Thank you for that. You're welcome, Bobby C. You're welcome. I figured that would earn me a quick 20. I mean, I really went for it. I went away. Wait, Alex Stein? What? Alex Stein needs a better opponent than Little First Amender. What is this? I don't know. All right. I'm going to, you know what? Wait, does he take transfers? I could at least do the good deed of transferring some of you over there. Guaranteed Alex Stein will be entertaining at least. First Amendment. Talk about a person that maybe gets me to think a little bit deeper on whether evolution is true. This First Amender dude. Oh, man. The problem is I didn't see him. I didn't see the channel. Let me see if I got it, if I just missed it. My skin tone gets me through. My skin tone gets me through. My skin tone gets me through. Let's see if he does. Primestein. Let's send it to... You guys want to go to Alex Stein's channel or Modern Day Debates channel? Alex Stein or 1 Alex Stein, 2 Modern Day. You guys choose. Stein, 1 Modern Day, 2. Alex, I've decided. Save. And let's get out of here, folks. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Have a beautiful Easter evening and Sunday. I really appreciate all the support. Thanks for coming out and cheering me on, sticking through. That was brutal. That was brutal at the beginning. I like that it kind of tapered off at the end at least, okay? So I really appreciate all the donations, new memberships, Bob Chats. Thank you for keeping my channel growing, thriving. I really appreciate it. And that is it for me. I will see you Monday, I guess. I'll take the day off tomorrow. Christ is risen. Adi. Actually, you know what? I want to end with something epic. Yes. This is my favorite. Hold on. You guys know what's happening. Here we go. You guys get to end with something beautimous. Yes. Let's do this. Here we go. Yep. It's happening. All right. Here we go. Hold on. Let me get this going. Get you guys full view. And I will end with this. Get my ugly mug out of there. and ending with pure beauty. Make sure YouTube's.
Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life.
Oops, sorry. No!
Christ is risen.
Messed it up. Sorry, guys.
from the dead,
My bad.
trampling down
That was
death
terrible.
by death, and
L's in the chat.
upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Christ is risen from the dead,
Exposed, yeah.
trampling down
You guys saw my back end.
death by death,
Nice passer.
upon
Nice
those
pass.
in the
That's
tombs
funny.
bestowing life. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life.
Христос воскресе!
Воистину воскресе!
Good night.